What, very nice
People see
party.
me just like you, and probably say like.
Thank you, I'm really excited about that, I think that's a cool
Every
idea.
single day I work.
I'll make sure that mama
We had
and
dinner
two
with
little
her aunt and
kids.
uncle last night.
It's
I
fun.
was glad.
So,
I didn't eat at
all
a restaurant
summer,
that way.
18 and under is free, so you don't need to get them.
Yeah, it was.
Where was that?
The kids are
They're in
free.
Santa Fe. Well, there's a little Santa Fe airport.
And I will tell my staff, and they don't make a big deal out of it.
Like
They won't just say, well, here's your ticket.
Awesome.
Because unless you really make them feel like you just gave them a free glass of wine.
Right.
You
It
know,
just goes in the bag.
Yeah,
I did,
no.
but
And we're not.
I said I gave them a
counter.
I also was there.
Just like I give my free calendar out in the front, up front. I have to walk back to the office and get one. And remember that I was
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, you're live. So if you could include some throwing in some violence later in the meeting, and I go viral, that would help. Viral videos are good. But we need some anger, we don't need this nice stuff.
Can we just like freak out over a ghost or something? We'll help the cause at the
It
same
would,
time.
oh my gosh, yes. Someone please go viral. Gladly be.
I need that in my life.
Anything else I can do?
Right, no, saying that in China, there's a low ration for you.
That is not a feeling. Where is that? Right.
I'm pretty sure Tokyo.
Oh, Tokyo, not China.
China, Japan.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the China. I'm sorry.
We want to do this, so we want to help his viral, his tape of this go viral. So the way that they'll do it is at one point, I'm gonna scream and say, Kirby, is that the ghost you're talking about? You guys get up out of your chairs and move back.
How about we just shake the tables?
Recording us now with a little TV station. So
Oh yeah, this will be a real popular session.
They're working really hard at this meeting. Usually pretty long.
It's usually pretty marijuana.
What's in that brownie?
You sure you wanna do that?
What's in that brownie?
I just read that one, you said that about the brownie.
I said, are you sure you wanna do that?
Think you've been down to the stores.
Oh, I thought you said we were eating that brownie.
Well, those stores, there is one that does the most beautiful confections, chocolates, and they are beautiful. Beautiful.
They're based on your.
I mean, they're a confectionaire that's like you would get in a high end.
Like right on.
They're beautiful. They really are.
I cannot take them home.
Well, sometimes, and I've got free samples from them that doesn't have any kids.
We have that in recreational.
So you.
John, you don't wanna be
Oh, no.
fine anyway, I would hate to have
You're gonna be stressed
a
out or?
dog sniff you out, even with dead meat.
Even with.
Right, that was.
Sleep tips should be where outside.
Yeah,
But it could be a
because they
special
come in here and
Yeah.
they do it.
Yeah.
Maybe there's
something, I wasn't in the office yesterday, so something about that.
Tim, I don't know what you're on this
You don't know what
morning.
to do about me, I know.
This
I'm a
morning, you
conundrum.
are not, you just aren't playing straight.
Tourism presentation.
You wouldn't want it if I did, would you?
Meeting.
Absolutely.
And this is why Jean won't allow me to drink any alcohol.
For that
Actually, she
tourism
doesn't care,
assessment,
but
and then
I don't,
we'll have a
because I
conversation
know how
about
crazy.
how
I'm already
to
crazy,
that.
you know, alcohol.
We'll start
Just
with
become totally not different on some,
But this.
know your limits.
Yeah. Like with the
Snap.
Hmm.
And then clear words and
Usually
your comment on it, you know, if you guys want.
I'm sort of non-functional.
I
I just feel like those are
Several hours.
No.
I just want to be liberal, that's all I have.
That's a truth serum.
Because when you get ready.
You don't
to
want me.
spend money,
In the room.
I plan to pull them, it's a plan.
Okay, it is about time to start for our evaluation. Are more people gonna be here? Should we wait a minute?
I think we can probably get started, Kathy, we could have people in and out this afternoon. We have another consultant in town doing Main Street, so that's where some of the people are.
Okay. So, a lot of you are kind of our main people anyway, and have been to a lot of our sessions, so that's good, because, as you know, this is a pilot program for the Craft 101 that will be, so we want to see how we might be able to improve, you know, kind of what's working, what might could be done better. So we want to just spend some time today doing the evaluation. So we thought we'd do this more qualitative format through a focus group. But we'll be sending everybody a online evaluation form, but we want to send it kind of to almost everybody who's participated. So we'll be doing that a little bit later, probably after we finish in Walsenburg, so we can send it to everybody, and we're done there pretty soon too. So you'll be seeing that come from us at some point, just, you know, a survey type of evaluation form too. So, and of course, you've been doing one for each session as we went along that's specific to the session. So these are a bit more of an overview rather than for any one specific one of the sessions. We're just looking at the program in general. So, so one of the things we always assure people about, and I don't know that you'll say anything that's particularly problematic, but we do keep things like this confidential. So it's possible we'll, you know, yeah, other than that, yeah, so maybe I shouldn't even make the confidentiality statement because it's really not. But we'll be summarizing all of this information to provide to CTO, so that they can use it for their benefit. And so, we will,
Hey Kathy,
yes.
do you want us to leave? I mean, I'm totally open to criticism.
It is really up to you. I guess I would ask the group here if you feel at all constrained in what you say by their presence. And if you don't, so I think it would probably be pretty beneficial for you to be here.
Great.
So
Okay.
that, you know, for all of our sake.
Just wanted to offer that.
I bet you also ought to have some input on what kind of participants you would like to see in the future.
Well, you guys have been exemplary, so I'm very, very pleased.
Okay, so.
That was not a fishing expedition.
I know.
But you had
That's the truth. It's the truth. Far exceeded my expectations.
So one of the things that we'll be doing is we're asking a few questions, and we'll ask the same questions when we do this in Walsenburg as well. So, you know, we're going to try to keep it on schedule. I think we've allowed plenty of time to do this because we think this is really important to have this information. But we do want to keep on schedule. We have a few topics to discuss, so if we rush things along, then bear with us. You know, sometimes things go a little fast, so John is going to be trying to get things down, so we may need to pause for a moment so she can get information down. So usually I will say to people, you know, we want everybody to participate, so we may, you know, call on you to do that, but we haven't really had any issues with people who don't participate here, so I don't think we have to worry too much about non-participation or non-participation. So we're going to focus on a few different things. One is how the program has helped you so far, and things we might be able to do to improve the program in the future, and some future opportunities for both yourselves and potentially other communities too. So let's go ahead and first talk a little bit about how the program has helped with your tourism planning, development, and marketing program. So I want to focus on each of those individually. All right, so first of all, In what ways do you think this program has helped with your tourism planning process?
I think it's put a process in place. It's also defined some strategies that we had not identified
Okay.
that help us just in general when we're thinking about tourism. An example of that would be the sustainability, the sustainable tourism inventory or assessment. Looking at that from a staff perspective made us think about developing tourism assets with that in mind. So that was strategies, I think, were more helpful for me in the
Okay.
planning side.
Even I would say providing a language, so like, and the foundationally providing definitions of different types of tourism, so that we could have the conversation to do what Tara was just saying.
Okay. Other ways it's helped with planning?
I think it's brought us all together to talk about things we found we were very similar on, also helped us get on the same page. So the
Okay.
process provided a
Right.
community
And stay
input.
focused.
Stay focused.
Okay. Do you think, so I don't want to spend too much time on any specific, modules or topics we focused on, but were there any of the topics you thought were more helpful than others from the planning perspective?
I do have an opinion on that, so I want to talk specifically about one that the one I thought was the weakest.
Okay,
And that was the entrepreneurship.
Okay.
It wasn't quite what I thought it might be.
okay,
It spent a lot of time defining what entrepreneurship was, and I think everyone in the room already knew that.
okay,
Like, I think we were already there. So if it had talked about maybe strategies that are more commonplace or trends you're seeing in entrepreneurship to help identify strategies for the individual entrepreneur.
okay,
I don't know, I see Viveka saying yes. I think less on the definition of what it is, because I think rural tourism talked about the definition of what tourism entrepreneurship was. I kind of laid that, and I know I'm not being very articulate. When I walked away, that was the only one I walked away thinking, oh, that wasn't quite what I thought it was going to
Okay.
be. I thought it was going to be more like, I have an idea, it's in tourism, or it was going to provide those of us that are trying to support that, how we help develop those people.
okay,
I
That-
think it was more textbook academia, centered and versus reality.
okay, so it could be more applied.
Because we,
More applied. And then the gentleman who spoke was so helpful for me in my economic development role.
Right,
But I felt like for the tourism people in the room that were developing businesses, someone who'd taken an unusual idea, like I was thinking of the lady on destination development that develops the slow food, that works in the slow food movement, talking about how she built that, from entrepreneurial area. So that was the one I thought needed maybe some strength. The one I enjoyed, but we didn't get deep enough, was social media and marketing.
okay,
I felt like we lit the surface of that. We needed an extra half day on that in and of itself. And the speaker there, everyone who was in the room that was from the community came up and said, I think we should hire him to do our plan. So I think we just didn't get quite enough of that.
Okay. okay.
It was great. I just think we got deep enough. But all the rest of them, I felt like hit the mark.
Okay, okay.
Does anybody disagree?
Well, was that the last one where we had the long table here? And there was a gentleman here?
Social media was at Mount Carmel.
No, not social media, the one you were, the first one.
Entrepreneur was
Was
that
that TSJC?
Okay, I missed
Yeah,
that.
in the,
Kiva room,
yeah.
whatever it's called.
Well, I found, that- I mean, I don't know if it's not specifically planning, but the last one, I just found that to be a long, long day, listening to that guy.
Where were we, Tim?
Here.
Here,
Here.
and
Oh.
he just, that was tough. But the ones, if we're gonna point the highlights out, when you bring in somebody who's had like experience out in the field, oh my goodness, that's when you get all jazzed up about, wow, look what we could do. And that's where I get inspired.
Steamboat Springs.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right.
Agritourism is
Yeah.
a really fun one. And I love the real life example, the actual interaction she had with it, and that it showed us, like this is a farm with like 4 people, You know, it doesn't have to be this huge
Right.
chuck wagon, cattle ranch, dude ranch thing, you know what I mean? Like, it could just be having 4 interns at the Good Food Project, and hello, you've got this whole new agro-tourism thing. So I agree with you, I second what you're saying, yes.
Almost all of the speakers that we identified with were people from communities that have done
Yeah.
this.
And then it like builds this network.
It does.
Yes.
Yes.
That is so
That-
critical.
Exactly, good
But
point.
a lot of times I felt like from the academia standpoint, that it was not reality, that you're gonna have to blend more of, you know, it's very easy to say, this is what you should do if you've never been in the trenches.
Now, on the opposite of that, the PowerPoints that were put together that we went through would be are gonna be exceptional online
Right.
for modules. So if I'm sitting in a town and we didn't get this craft studio
Right.
101, and I'm going online to learn about rural tourism or agritourism, the PowerPoints were spot on.
Okay.
But I think, to Vivica's point, when in presenting, when you had a case study that called an example to it,
Yeah,
it hit home a little
It
bit
does.
more.
it does. And the way the presentation itself is, I love the PowerPoint up there, but rather than the focus of our group, and you're reading what that is, that to me doesn't hit me as well. You know, take control of your audience and speak to them about that stuff, but don't read down it, because that's when I start getting sleepy.
Right.
But that's just a presentation style.
Right, right.
So, yeah.
Kind of on that note, and this is a tough one to balance, I mean, there is an opportunity where, like, input and everybody's content and opinions need to be heard, but then when it just goes into bunny trails and, oh, and then this thing happened to me once,
I know,
2 years ago downtown, and
Yes.
these stories, and then it just, like, it was, I sacrificed a lot to get to all these meetings. It was really hard on my schedule to be here. And then to sit through hour or something of kind of this,
Mhm. Yes.
it's
Bring it back
frustrating.
into
Like,
focus.
it's-
Keep on
that's
topic.
again more style and
Right.
like really
Well,
good.
that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. And I think both you as the moderator and Tara also, you were able to recognize when those moments happen and bring it back. And I appreciate that. And
It's a tough line to watch because
It is.
you want
I feel
that
like you've been
community
the most
interaction.
successful at it.
It is tough because while you want everybody to say what they want to say, you also kind of have to keep things.
Really
Yeah.
tough.
Right. That's
And
a
I
tough
don't know if
thing.
there's like a way to, because you do want a community forum aspect to it, so maybe there's a opening meeting or meeting or two that's just really participatory, all kinds of ideas and blah, blah, blah. And then getting down, like, a little more output out of this would have been nice, like a little more, we got some good stuff today, but I
Output
would have
from
wanted
each
a little
session.
more output.
So like if we were doing
Process.
agritourism,
Okay,
the education part is so critical. And I know we're kind of throwing little stones at that by adding case studies and stuff, but it is so critical. But what I hear you saying, Jeff, is maybe at the end of that, then having a deliverable that we walk away, that we can say, okay, here are the most applicable agritourism things that we can implement. And we kind of had that through the worksheets, and that's gonna be a lot of the homework
Right.
that we're gonna go back and do. So, but I'm seeing that homework and he's not.
Right, right.
So that may be the difference, and that may be a failure on our part. It was coming at us so fast. And I don't know that you could do it any different, because even the 2-week break here made it hard for me to get my head back into what we were doing here.
That
So
was exactly my issue.
we met like 4 times, 5 times right in a row, and it was so good, but there wasn't time to do any of the homework between. So I don't know how you balance that, because if we'd had this last week,
Right.
I would have felt like we flowed into it a little better.
Okay, so let's look at this again with so talking specifically about actual tangible products. It seems
Okay.
like you all are saying more of that would have been helpful. So going back to the idea of tourism planning, tourism development, tourism marketing, right? So let's look at the kinds of maybe products that would be helpful to develop on all of those 3 areas, right?
Okay.
So we kind of worked on marketing today.
Okay,
Right,
we
so And we worked on marketing a little bit a while ago, because our initial, wherever our page went, you know, the target market and so forth was from the marketing session. So thinking about some of that, so from a tourism planning perspective, what more tangible, applied product do you think would have been helpful to you to have when we finished our sessions more related to planning?
When we were in the agritourism session, and I'll go back to that because I think that's where a light bulb went off for some of us on what agritourism was to start with. And then what I heard the room say is, wow, we really have opportunities here. This is really something we could do. I think a lot of lights went on in that presentation. So, but now I'll have to go back. I couldn't tell you right now what my ideas were in that moment of what we could develop.
Okay.
And I'll have them in my notes because I scribbled all over a page.
Okay.
But just having some sort of deliverable at the end of that, so, you know, do you think you can develop agritourism? Okay, what are the five things that in the next couple of years you can do to develop that? Same with outdoor rec. You know, outdoor rec's a little more present in our minds now. That's why I use agritourism as an example. It was something we were curious about, but we found out we've got a lot of it.
Right.
And there's a lot that can be easily developed, but I didn't walk out of that session with an agreed upon from everyone list of what we should
Things
do.
we could be doing.
I wrote down a lot of things I think we could be doing.
Okay.
So is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, and with respect to all of them, planning, this is kind of a development thing, but planning and marketing, I mean, what, you know, for example, what more?
So back to outdoor rec, an example there is, we did do some itineraries. We did do some itineraries, we've got that.
Right.
But and that was like small group work where we had itineraries, but what would have been valuable to me as staff would have been, okay, guys, what opportunities do we have? What are coming down the pike? Can we all agree that if we can't be the outdoor anything, where is our largest,
Okay, right.
where is our largest growth gonna be? And is it mountain biking? Is it climbing? Is it,
Well, we never
horseback
brought that
riding.
back together.
we never brought it back together,
It was
so.
never, each individual group, we never saw what the other group had done.
And I have those,
Okay.
you know, I have those, but I don't think we walked out with a group agreement that this asset or this asset or this asset was kind of where we're going. So right now, if tourism board was to sit down tomorrow to decide what to market in outdoor rec, I don't know that we would then go back to Tim and say, what do you think? Instead of kind of coming out of the group with something for it.
Yeah. I kind of like that idea of maybe putting it like a more hard deliverable at the end of the day, because we did kind of these little tables where we each did our itinerary, and each of us kind of interpreted the assignment a little bit differently, and our output was a little bit different, and then in the end, it didn't really, I don't know if it was thought out well enough with priorities in mind to be useful. It was a good exercise to learn about it, and as a group kind of discuss it, but then the output wasn't that valuable, but like a more concrete output that was then really could be worked and refined.
So Tim could go back to the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission and say, hey guys, I participated in cat culture. Could go back and say, I participated in this, and here's what the community group wants to focus on. And so here's what tourism is asking us to help them develop a marketing strategy for. And you would have walked out of that meeting with that assignment to take back to your world, the same as Jeff would have walked out of the meeting with the creative, to take back to the creative district and say, here's what Trinidad's gonna market, here are the top things that we wanna look at for the next year, you know? So, I think that probably a hard deliverable from each one.
And is that something that would be focused on? I don't really know what the next level is, but there's been talk of 201. Is that where that focus lies? Or?
It could be, it could be, that's sort of the general idea where Craft 101 sort of opens up all these different concepts and new ideas around tourism to a community or the tourism board or something, and then they determine, you know, okay, this is something that we we've sort of touched on a little bit through 101, and we need to take it to the next level. And so then with the 201, you would apply for that, and then you get 100 hours of mentor service to just focus on that. So that's why we sort of say 101 is the broad, comprehensive training, where the 201 is customized support for whatever priority you all have.
So like the management plan and marketing plan for the large outdoor project would be a 2.
And I think that all of us are saying we have been to so many of these planning sessions over and over and over again. And we need to do more than just talk. We need to have, okay, good, bad, indifferent. We need to have an action.
Right.
We've got to move on from just more of the, and it has got to be realistic. Because a gentleman who talks about, well, my job ends at 5 because I work for the state, and 8 hours is not, you know, and it just really stuck in my craw, because all day everybody has been talking about merchants need to be open a minimum of 12 hours a day, they need to be open 7 days a week, and so, you know, who's talking?
Well, I wonder if, to kind of trade on Vivica's point, if in the application process, you identified what your project was going to be much earlier.
And we're gonna talk about the application process in a little bit, so let's.
The
keep
reason
that.
I'm going there now, though, is these short deliverables that we're talking about out of each session.
Right,
If you knew the first day you met us,
right.
what our goal was, you could have been shaping our deliverables toward that goal. So we'd actually be bringing all those deliverables today and walking out with something saying, because we worked on it like over the 8 modules, we worked on a little bit of it.
So let me ask this to all of you, do you think you could have done that? Come up with your actual project before we started?
Well, I could have told them what it was, but that wasn't the point, right?
Well, that is
I mean, I think from my own perspective I could, but that not for each segment. I mean,
Right,
I think
right.
Each segment would have their own thing that they relate to and would
Right.
bring to their, you know, the table for their needs.
Gosh, that's the chicken and the egg.
There is a little
I don't
bit to
know.
that. I mean, there's a lot of exploratory stuff that just is not gonna happen. It's sometimes, some of that's useful exploration, but at the same time, there's still timing and budget and constraints.
But
So it
if
is a tough.
If we had sat down as this group, you know what I mean, like, we've gone through all of it, here's who's here, right? Outdoor rec, merchants, creative district, heritage, right? Like, if us 5 had sat down and said, this is kind of where we think we want to go, then brought the community in and said, how do you want to expand this? Where do you want the focus to be? How do you want to do this, right? And
So maybe instead of 2 days at the end to work on the project, you split that. You have a day at the beginning, and then you have a day at the end. And that first meeting is bring your leaders from your industry of what you think you want to develop. And then we sit down and talk about what we have, what we don't have, and we do that discussion at first with the idea that out of that, a pretty good idea of what we want to get out of it comes out in that first day. Because if we'd spent the 8 hours, I think to your point in this group, we might have decided right then, at least be a lot more comfortable deciding right then of what we wanted to do, then go into the modules and bring the community in.
So to wrap this piece up, do you think it's fair to say that with respect to tourism planning, development, and marketing, that you all feel like there was some good conceptual information, right? It opened your eyes to some new options.
Absolutely.
Oh, for sure.
Okay, but you would like to have some more tangible outputs of the
Yes.
sessions. So is that a good way to
That's a
wrap up
good
everything we
synopsis,
just
That's a
said?
very good synopsis.
Okay.
You hit it right on the head.
Okay.
And in no way were we criticizing the information, it was invaluable, but I think exactly what you said.
Okay. So, what, I want you all to just think for a minute. And we're gonna just do a little bit of a round robin here to see what you think. So what I'd like you all to think of, the 2 most important items or new knowledge you learned during the program from your perspective as an individual, right? So 2 things from your perspective as an individual, but also 2 things from your perspective as a community video, for your community, all right? So as an individual, and 2 things that you learned as a community that you think would be helpful. So just think for a minute and write down, so it'll be a total of, 4 items, 2 for you, 2 for your community, and what you think was the most important new item or new knowledge that you have.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Okay, it looks like everybody's pretty much finished up, so do we want to just, Nikki, you want to start and we'll go around the room?
That's unfair. Tam's much brighter than I
Yeah,
am.
but I'm sitting closer to you.
Okay, probably the biggest thing, and from day one, that I realized that I was not utilizing for my business was the social media.
Okay.
And under that, I mean, I know there are so many pockets, and to go along with that, I realized that somehow I am going to have to find someone who can assist with that.
Okay.
And that I would drop into things for the community as well.
Okay.
I think the 2 things that I have are, I think, both for my business and for the whole entity. And the other one, and today it really hit it home, is to better identify my customer base.
Okay.
And I have already made notes as to
Okay.
implementation of that.
Good. All right, thanks. Okay.
What I learned from the classes that I really liked were the presenters from different communities and seeing their vision, how they came together and how they made their cities more vibrant and attractive. And as far as like the group itself, I learned that there's a lot of commitment here from everybody here, and the passion from all the merchants and the city staff and everybody that everybody just wants to work together as a team.
Okay, good. That's actually a really good thing to learn, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily content, it's just,
Yeah.
yeah. That's good. That's neat.
Okay, for the community, I walked away with the sense that tourism planning is the only way we can really become a destination. We've got to think about what we're doing and rather than just react. The second thing is data, data, data. If we're gonna take public funding, we're gonna invest it, we need to start analyzing how we're making that investment. And the only way we can do that is through identifiable data. So those are the two things for the community. For me personally, I never thought about, in our very first module, rural tourism, something was described about your, in your tourism inventory, looking at attractors and satisfiers differently. They're both equally important. There was something that struck home for me, and I had never really thought of it that way. There are going to be those things that attract people to Trinidad, and then those things that satisfy them when they get here. There's a favorite restaurant, I always eat it in Salida. It's not an attractor, people probably don't go there for the restaurant, but it sure is a satisfier. Ironically, that satisfier is the reason I stop there every time I go down the road. Even though the attraction that originally got me there was the steam plant. That was the attractor. So I think thinking about it strategically from that point was helpful. And then there's a quote that I took very personally. In fact, I have it now as my, at home on my, what do you call it when your computer goes to sleep? Screensaver. It says, leaders think beyond their experience and plan beyond their tenure. So that was something very personal I took away. For who I want to aspire to be, to think beyond my experience and plan beyond my tenure. So that's something personal. So.
Are you going to tell us the restaurant? Because
I can't think of the name of it, so I could drive you to it. It's an incredible pizza place. It's in an old diner.
Okay.
It's just a couple of blocks off, like,
I'm
from the river. Maybe that's it.
Okay, no, okay.
Maybe that's it. Yeah, it's an excellent. There's also a good coffee shop there. There's a good coffee shop in Canyon City. Isn't it funny? Food's always the
I know,
satisfier.
right.
It's always the satisfier.
Food is extremely important, and that's why when you were talking about tourism services is, what do you think about restaurants? Because it's a huge thing.
It really
Waiters,
is.
like singing waiters or a product, development of pieces of product. I mean,
People come from Amarillo just to eat at Bellona. I had 2 yesterday, just for that.
it's,
Set the tone for our first visit.
Yeah.
I never had lunch there, still remember what the citrus
Yeah.
dressing.
that's amazing.
Okay.
So for me as an individual, the agritourism law that absolves you from,
The identification.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was a really important thing that I've already shared with people. And then the chart of movement of people in Colorado, it was a really powerful tool for sort of figuring out
Tourism trends.
tourism for the museum.
Where was that? Was that in the sales and marketing? I think it was in the marketing one when we were talking about migration and movement. I think it was in the marketing
Yeah.
section.
Yeah, I remember the chart.
Yeah.
And then as a community, we need more commitment to outdoor rec. Like more people helping, more people cleaning trails.
Mhm.
As a community, we don't have enough investment in something that we all portray as one of our biggest assets.
Right.
And then collaboration for events. So like just more communication, and rising tide to make what we do have more successful and attractive so that we can diversify.
Thanks. Okay.
I think on just a personal educational note, it was great to get sort of the current trends and information about what's happening in tourism, like updating my knowledge of what's going on, like all of the itinerary-driven things. I had no idea that was just so strong. Every website now that I started to look on my own time, it's like everybody has an itinerary. So, and then kind of a subset of that is then really having a strong inventory. I think we had some fun exploring and thinking about the inventories we had a little more. Sometimes we complain about Trinidad not having enough, but then as we unpacked that, it was more there. So it was good. And then the community, that decision to do the local marketing, I think is great. Because I think it's gonna pay off in a number of different ways, and then I think about space to create and all of the, it's gonna be a big project and very challenging in some ways to the community, get marketing to the community to help. And then, kind of going back to some earlier comments, just this process, and then coalescing of the ideas and doing our best to make sure that this isn't some swap that's gonna sit on a shelf, but we're actually, we need to make movement, we need to go.
Amen.
And,
I'm gonna email you all every week and ask you what you've done this week.
So,
Yeah, sometimes. Okay, thank you.
Mine are kind of interchangeable between the community and what I personally learned, but just an overall better understanding with the tourism, because I didn't even think about, well, what about the process of things being made? I thought that was just kind of mind-boggling to me. Understanding we're not alone, that all these things of all the struggles we're going through, each successful place went through those first. It's not just a dead end for us, it's, we're getting there, we're going to get there soon. Thinking about, the micro details, because we're bringing in more tourists, so we were realizing we need more parking, but we didn't think, we need signage to bring those people to the parking, otherwise it's useless. And then lastly is just learning all the different strategies for advertising, like that 3-3 sleep. That totally, it was so simple, and it just figured out all the all the holes that were missing. I was like,
Judy.
Judy.
Yeah.
The amazing Judy Walden.
She's amazing.
I know.
And for me, just the presenters were the important things, the presenters in the CTO office, just really making this happen and coming down here and making us feel really part of the state, because, for years Trinidad's operating. I know that Tara's done a great job of really bringing Trinidad to downtown Denver, and we're the state capital and where people are at, but truly we have marketed Trinidad for a long time, feeling like we're really far away from the state, and any money or any interest is going on down here. So that, and then kind of like I think Jeff and them, I really feel like we've talked about this for years, but really putting the program together for residents, for them to see tourism differently. If they're working in a business that doesn't have to do it, or they don't think it has to do with tourism, is to really to really educate our populace on what would happen if all the restaurants and hotels disappeared from Trinidad, and how important that industry is. And to get people to stay at those hotels and restaurants, what you have to do is you also have to market the walking paths, the river, the this, the that, because there's so many people that have different lives, So really educating our populace is more important than ever, I think, for me.
Okay, good. All right, very good.
It's hard for me to differentiate between the me and for the city.
Yes.
But I will tell you, the first thing that hit me was when the lady from Steamboat Springs spoke, and she said in the 90s, they hardly had any mountain bike trails in Steamboat. And at that time, they decided they were going to call themselves Bike Town USA. And they weren't. But they said they were. But they said they were. So it's like, okay, so we need to dream ourselves a little bit bigger and put it out there, and then, and follow it. So that was a big one. And I didn't get to meet this person because I wasn't here, but I was given the contact info, and that was a huge thing for me, by the way. I got the business card of the Steamboat Springs lady, the lady from Uray, Eagle, and then somebody else gave me the contact information for Meeker. There's a person there, I don't know if they were here, but that they're doing ATVs. Now, I'm not into ATVs or motorcycles, but it's part of outdoor rec, so I want to meet that need here and try to figure it out. So there's another contact that was made. So that was a big thing for me. And then Eagle also did that. They just made their mountain bike park, and now look how much of an impact that is. So that was big. Another thing was, for me, I'm just a volunteer, but the interaction with the city officials is a big thing, and I realized, okay, I need to put more emphasis on that to get some of these things done that we dream about in our little tours, our little Parks and Rec meetings, but I need to get back to the city and say, hey, we really need to do this, you know, and so, I mean, I guess that was another big thing for me. So, and then the last point was when I was just, we were in a break, and I met with the lady from Uray and Steamboat Springs, and I was talking about the potential we have for outdoor rec here, and they said, be careful what you wish for. And that was very important to me to be prepared. So we have this opportunity now to think and find out from them what like the traffic and other things that we're dealing with. How do we deal with that before they come? Because I tell you, especially if we get Fisher's Peak, I know, that's the way I feel too.
We're gonna have to build parking
When we
lots.
get Fisher's Peak, I mean, we better really be planned. So this is a great start for that. And I echo what Jeff said, like, let's not just let this lie as a document. Let's make it,
I think we all feel that,
Yeah.
because we've done enough of this.
yeah.
Well, I think we went into this initiative with that idea that that wasn't gonna happen.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, good,
Thank you.
thanks. There is one other thing, if I can be with me some more. I never realized how much data and information and resources that Colorado tourism had available to us.
There is a
And
lot
it
there.
is an untapped gold mine,
Resource.
and we need to utilize it. And I'm not saying that because you're sitting there.
She would have said that anyway.
And then on a local level, probably something that would never have happened if, we need to build each other. And this would never have happened had we
What is
not
that?
had this. The museum is allowing children 18 and under in free. We were allowed to purchase for the adults at a discounted rate, a ticket. So I wrote a check, a very small one, and look what all I got for the parents. And I already have one parent local, so this is both for tourists and local tourism. She is so excited because she's on a limited budget, and she has 2 children, and the $5 would have been a burden. And now she can come here free with her children.
That's fantastic. What a great program.
And it allows me to be able to say, what do you mean there's nothing to do? And I have 2 calendars.
Okay, great, thanks for that. So the next thing we're gonna talk a little bit of is ways to improve the program. So we're looking for constructive comments here on things, and you already mentioned some, but I wanna kind of go with that a little bit more here, on a
Guess we
couple
gotta
of
do
different
ourselves.
topics. So again, thinking of constructive comments, I have a few things specifically that we want your input on. So the first thing, because this is where we start, is the application process and the application itself. And I know probably not everybody was involved in that, so whoever was can comment on what you thought about that process and if there's anything that you might do differently.
I thought it was a great process.
Okay.
Actually, Cy and I had a very in-depth conversation, and then I wrote to that conversation, and then we had another conversation, and we finalized it, and then we hit submit, and Raven proofed it, a couple other folks at the city proofed it, the community didn't see it prior to, so we had told them what was going on and gotten commitments to it, but we didn't, so I mean, from the perspective of the person who wrote it, I thought it was very well done. I liked what you asked back earlier, if we had done the application process, could Cy and I have determined that a marketing plan for we would have ended up, we might have, but we had no idea where the community was gonna take it, and we truly wanted it to be community-led.
We did.
Did you think the application was well done? I mean, did it give you enough coming in?
Yeah, it did.
To be able to get a
Yeah.
sense of who we were?
Yeah, you all did a really nice job on that. There's one comment, and actually this is not related to any of these, but there's one comment I have that I think would have been helpful for us, is that if we had the opportunity, our whole group of people, our whole team to come to each community for a day before we started working on this.
That might have been great.
It actually would have been really, really helpful, so kind of for the future, it just gives you a really good overview.
That one,
Yeah.
so let me ask you, back to the application process, let's say the city hadn't fronted the application, let's say it had come from several community members, and say it had come from Parks and Rec, so it would have been highlighted to Park and Rec, but what if they didn't tie back into the tourism board when they wrote it? There was no specific requirement that I saw in the application that you needed. Like, I don't know that that would have been successful if one segment of the community had written the application.
Okay, good,
Um,
got it, yeah.
Without, what we did, I thought that was good, is we made sure a broad section was here.
Right,
But what if the Kiwanis had written the application?
Right.
Because they decided they really wanted to build tourism. It might have been a good process for them, but I don't know that they would have had that buy-in or access to resources to implement. So you may want to think about specifying
but it needs to be a broad
an
community.
an organizing agency with a broad community-based
Yeah, right.
effort.
That makes a lot of sense.
That would be the only thing I would think.
Okay, good, thanks. The next thing you did mention a little bit about this, but let's go a little bit further with it, is the timing, the intensity, and the depth of the sessions. So, you were mentioning earlier, Tara, about maybe they were too far apart, but on the other hand, do you really have time? So what do you think about the timing in particular?
And now that it's done, I think having them close together was helpful. But it's tough to get some, and that's why this is the group. Think about the commitment these folks made to take away from their business or their jobs to participate. Tim doesn't count. 'cause
Or their
he's
retirement.
Or their retirement. There you go.
Or their life.
That's right.
It is still summertime.
And we took, 4 to 5 staff out of City Hall all day for every single one of
Yeah,
those,
right.
so the strain of that. So there's that, but then if we had spaced these out and done one every 2 to 3 weeks, would we have held everybody?
No.
I don't think so. See, I think there would have been too much time between them.
So do you all generally agree that the timing, actually last time, closer together would be been better than
This one would
Yes.
have been better last week.
It would have been better last week.
Okay,
I will say the 2 days in a row was a killer.
Yeah.
okay,
The 2 days in a row was a killer. If it had been a Monday and a Thursday, it would have been easier.
okay.
But to have a Tuesday and Wednesday back to back, and that's the one when we were at the college, and by the end of the day, I think it was just maybe me inside in the room, and she was walking out the door saying, "I'm going to cook." As the last presenter, because
Right.
those 2 days were really
Just a
tough.
lot, okay.
That was the one day Vivica had to leave a little bit early, and Kirby and Jeff and everybody, so.
So close, but not too close.
Close, but not too close, but the great thing, so the great thing about homework is we go back into, tomorrow at the tourism board meeting, we go back into the rural tourism model. We're putting the PowerPoint back up, we're talking through the homework, we're gonna get some direction from the board on which way to go with homework, and then we're gonna implement and get back to this group with what we've done.
Okay, so let me ask about the timing of the homework, because our original thinking was that you would actually do that before the sessions that you came to. Could you possibly have done that? Or was that just out of the question for the time?
I didn't even distribute it.
Okay.
I'll take the onus on that.
Okay,
But I think it was hard enough to get people, we realized the commitment that we were making. And kind of being the first time and not knowing what we were gonna get out of it, I just looked at it and said, there's no way, but we are going to use it
okay.
and implement it as a community.
Okay, good. All
And
right.
this will be the check-in group if they want to be and stay engaged.
Okay. That's good. How about the intensity, like the depth of the training, the amount covered? Was it good? Was it too little? Was it too much?
It kind of goes back to some of it did tend a little too much to the academic
Okay.
as opposed to the applied.
Okay.
But then there was something you walked
But
away
then some
from
of
for
those
every
exercises
academic.
were great, like really good in-depth discussions about assets and So, just a,
I think if you keep the academic and increase the deliverable,
Right.
you'll hit the mark.
Right, just balance that out a little bit more.
Just balance it out a little bit more.
The applied versus the conceptual, basically, right? Just balance that out a little bit more.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
That's because she lived.
How about, okay, so how about the topics that were available to you? Because, for the most part, we decided what those were gonna be and gave you the opportunity to pick a few, so, so were those all good for you, or was there something you would have liked to have that you didn't, as far as the topic goes?
I think
I
it's
thought
great.
the topics were on point.
Yeah.
I did for sure. I did for sure. And there isn't a topic that we covered that isn't playing into
Okay.
where we're going.
Okay.
I don't think you could eliminate one. I think you could strengthen it. We mentioned strengthening a few.
Right, okay.
But I don't think you can eliminate one.
And you can you think of anything at all that you might have liked to have in the mix of choices that you didn't have in there?
I would have liked more opportunity for meet and greet with the visitors.
Okay.
I was, ended up
Oh,
having
yeah,
only a
yeah.
short time, but more time with them would be great.
Okay, great.
So if they came in to present, then most of them stayed the night unless they hit the road or something. Are you thinking more of like an out of training experience with them?
Yeah, no, just afterwards. And I'll give you an example, the way I just did it on my own, but because I was very interested in the lady from Steamboat Springs, and she was staying the night, she had her dog, she asked me where there was a dog park. I said, I'll take you to the dog park, let's meet there. So we took our dogs over there, my wife brought our dogs down, and we all talked some more. And, you just got to know someone a little better, so that now I'm definitely gonna go up to Steamboat Springs and tour there, meet with her, and she's gonna introduce me to some other people that are into the mountain biking community. So it's those connections that's so meaningful to me. So
They
that-
came
I
all
just-
this way, so how do we mine that a little bit more?
Exactly, just have that time somehow afterwards.
So do you think, so let's say there's some time at the end of the day available just to speak with the people who are coming? Because it could be that some people are interested in more, like you with the mountain biking, but others may not have been.
Right,
So
right.
just for the people who want to have
Right.
more of a conversation, we could set that up for, the end of the program or something
Yeah,
like
even
that.
just saying that they're available afterwards is
Okay.
probably enough.
Okay, okay.
Because not everybody at the end of the day is gonna wanna talk even more about it. They've got tasks to go do, but,
Right.
but
Don't you
if it's
retire
there.
now?
So we could, okay, so that's a good idea. We could make a little bit more time, their time available. So generally, content, you already mentioned that perhaps a better balance between conceptual content and applied content would be helpful.
Mhm.
Anything else you can think of about content that you have some comments about?
The homework is gonna be great. I mean, I've looked at it, so I think that's gonna be spot on, but of course they haven't seen it yet. so.
Right.
And I guess that brings up a question for me. I had seen the tourism board as the one to do the homework because they're the appointed officials, but do you all want to be copied on everything that's going on with the initiative? I mean, that's something we haven't talked about. Does this continue? I heard some intent for this to continue within this group.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Put this approved, be an advisory board to the tourism board.
on this
Yeah.
initiative for sure.
Yeah.
On this initiative for sure, and making sure that we're applying those dollars correctly next year, as this group has discussed. Okay, we'll figure out what that looks like, without asking you to give up a whole lot more time. How do we do that?
The next thing is about things like the format or the activities. What of those kinds of things did you like best? So we did some discussion, we did some presentation, you all did some work in groups. Did that all seem to be about right, or are there some things you have suggestions for with respect to the format?
The assessments were the most help to me, more so than like developing itineraries and stuff like that. Because the assessments are a strategy for how you plan.
Right, so I could see the assessments being helpful for you,
You-
but maybe
for
for
me.
individual business owners,
Maybe not.
or, you know, maybe itineraries are better, I don't know. Any other comments on format?
Where's Camilla? She likes to.
The only, like, with format for me is, you know, like, I think Jeff was saying people went down a lot of rabbit holes, and I feel like the only way to avoid that is to give them the opportunity to talk to each other. So, like, there are a little more breaks, and discussing what was just said, I think would be helpful, like, it's been a long time since I've been in a classroom for 8 hours. And there were definitely some times where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I just want to get up and leave. Like, I don't have to sit here and I don't want to because it's just too long.
Okay, so length may be a bit much. We actually even talked about that after the
I
first day,
think
that if they might
the
go long.
one on, was it employment
Entrepreneurship.
It was just in general for me.
Yeah.
Like, I work at a job where I move constantly. Like, I play with kids. Like, I need movement and breaks, and I gotta be able to talk about what I just heard.
Okay, so long days, okay, yeah. But we were feeling that.
One component, the gentleman from the Department of Labor,
Yeah, that was tourism and entrepreneurship. Yeah.
was that what it was?
Yeah.
Well, it just really did not.
Yeah.
It just really did not.
He was helpful to me on the economic development side, but didn't, I think, meet the needs to the room.
No, and, you know, he has never run a business or, you know, he inferred he had, but I mean, it just was not relevant.
So is there a way for you to deliver the content and structure in more movement or discussion? Some of the best times we had, I think, were when we were sitting around during lunch and we got into a topic.
Okay.
So maybe if there's a way to do, if you wanted to shorten it, maybe that's where you incorporate in eating and group discussion on
Okay, we'll think
specific
through that a
topics.
little bit on how to maybe shorten things up and.
That's an interesting point, like one workshop I went to at lunch, this table, and they had an assigned topic, and everybody had lunch, and that was the topic they were
Like a round
interested in.
table kind
Yeah,
of idea.
and then
And
So
the
you can kind of
deliverables can come out of
continue
that.
So you could look at the
what you've
table
been
and see the topic.
processing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been to places like conferences that do that, we discuss the topic at the table. Okay. You all have kind of mentioned that at least most of the guest speakers were really helpful.
Yes,
The
yes.
one guy evidently is the one, so the guest speakers, were they helpful because of the applied nature of what they were telling you? Right?
Yes. How they did it.
Okay.
And the inspirational aspect of it as well.
And that they had done it.
Yes, right. It was
It
successful.
wasn't textbook, it was,
Yeah.
And when we went to Walsenburg, there was a couple of different speakers
Yeah, there were.
that we didn't get to see.
Yeah.
They didn't get to see.
Yeah, because not everybody could come every day,
Right.
so there were.
I really enjoyed some
Yeah.
of the speakers in Walsenburg.
Yeah.
So it was really nice.
So one of our intents, and we wrote it into the grant, and we did a so-so job on it, was to spend time outside the training, giving you guys a Trinidad experience, and because it came so fast, it was kind of hard to stay on top of
Right.
that as well as the initiative. But if you wanted to shorten the classroom time, maybe building in some things, like one day, if you wanted, I'm just throwing this out there, we could have toured Coda Signature, which was the marijuana chocolate place.
Right,
We could have done a formal tour of the museum grounds one day.
right.
We could have, those of you who ride bikes, and I know Hillary does, and there's one other person could have gone with Tim on a ride, you know what I'm saying? So it's like combining in, and maybe the person from Eagle would have gone with you guys. You know, so here we have a classroom instruction, and then we hear from a speaker, and then there's an activity afterwards
That would be
that
cool.
maybe I wouldn't have gone on, but Tim would have had a couple of people who would have gone, and then from that that person from Eagle as well as you guys would have been able to comment more on that,
And what you're doing.
what you're doing. So that might be a way to build that in.
And that could be a great way to enhance the internal marketing piece too, is if we can invite key people, even if they're not a part of this group, to come along. You know, a lot of good networking and actual sightseeing too.
And then another thing we could have done with Sinai and Raven between, like if we had that day structured that way, we could have done like a mandatory conference call as a follow-up. You know, what do we get out of this? What are the deliverables, and kind of agreed upon, because it's been hard from a staff side. I've got this stack of papers on my desk, it's like craft, and in talking with Jill earlier, they're gonna help us kind of organize all that into something. But, you know, if we've done a call after each one to say, okay, here's what we got out of it, here's what we're doing next, to give us some instruction on what to do next. So I know there was the intent of giving out the homework, but I just looked at it and went, oh my gosh, you know, I don't have time to do this much, less to distribute it.
Why, you're
So-
not gonna do a whole community assessment in 2 days?
So, I mean, I'm just throwing out ideas there,
Right,
maybe on how to increase the experience by exposing you to the community a little bit more.
Right.
So that if you hopped on the phone with us after, you could go, hey, we were on the tour with Tim, we were riding the bikes over the Wormhole Loop Trail, and here's where I think, your advantages are.
I definitely think that would have been useful for us to have had more of that too, so.
And that would also have opened you up to getting engaged to more people in that world.
Yeah, right.
Because we could have specifically invited 4 or 5 people
Yeah.
to spend some time with you.
Right.
Same thing with museums. We could have, on the heritage side, created some experiences around heritage and done that. We could have created some experiences around culinary, some different things like that.
You've got another visitor. I like to be the home monitor.
They usually
They should
know
not.
what they're doing by now.
They just went to that.
Well, I did see some peering in that window a while ago, so they were sort of wondering what's in here. Okay, the final thing, and again, we've talked a little bit about that, so that's the final project. And again, I think you were feeling like, you decided on what that was gonna be a little late. But then the question is, how much earlier could you have determined what it was gonna be? So, yeah, that's a tough one, because I don't know that you would have known when you were doing your application, this is what we're gonna do for our final project. And I don't know that you would have known even after the first session or 2, that you would have known, so.
Unless it was like a top 3 or something.
Right. I guess, I don't know that we have a resolution on that, but it seems like something needs to be a little different, right?
Well, I think if you go back and look at the application though, what we talked about a lot is the lack of marketing plan and direction. And we talked about having all these assets and these tourism dollars coming in, but not knowing how to invest them. So I would say that if you'd asked me when we were writing the application, what we were doing it for, we were writing it because tourism board needed direction on how to invest marketing dollars on behalf of the community. So that's not exactly saying the marketing plan, but that's what we needed, that's what we knew. So I think a little bit, it's about what's the intent of the community in doing it. So the application that's strongest should come from a community that knows this is kind of what they need.
So maybe we in CTO could have just even inferred that, right, from your application, that it seems like this is what they need. And one thing we don't want to do is tell you what you're going to do.
Right.
Right, so, but we could have made that suggestion.
Maybe in that first conference call,
Right.
when the 3 of us did that call on the 15th, you could have said, based on your application, here are like the top 3 things that we think might help you.
Okay.
The deliverables that might help you, and talk through what each one of those are, and then maybe we didn't go in the very first day knowing that was it, but you could structure deliverables from each session toward that goal, even if we didn't know at the beginning.
Jill, would you feel comfortable doing something like that based on the application, as making some inferences if we think these are the things that might help you?
Yes, generally.
Generally,
One of the
yeah.
things that we do struggle with is there's sometimes, I feel like not here, but there's occasionally there's disconnect with those that write the application and then the community members or even the ones that hold, you know, the tourism keys within the community aren't, but, you know, there's not a lot of continuity there. And so to go into a place with that
Assuming,
sort of
yeah.
assumption, but then to know that the people that are showing up to the meetings, there's another core group that have this different expectation over here, it's a challenge. So I think it would work out well if
Here, yeah.
everyone in the community prior to applying was all on the same page and had communicated it out. But one of the things that I've seen this program help with, and I think it could potentially help with more, is just aligning those different groups
Right.
within the community. And so to put it in that early application
Mhm.
part would be a challenge, but you can definitely have that as knowledge going into it, and you can bring that as a base and a foundation, and then either build off of that or move in a different direction.
So maybe there's too much pressure by saying there's gotta be a project that comes out of it. I mean, maybe what Studio 101 is exactly what it is. It's been this huge conversation, and how you end it is by saying, okay, based on all your conversations, your work over the next 5 years needs to include a marketing plan, it needs to include a visitor analysis, it needs to include this, an internal strategy, it needs to include this, and then you help prioritize which one you go for first, and then that sets the community up to go out and look at that next project. Maybe the pressure here is in, was this gonna be an instruction or a deliverable? Does that make sense? I mean,
But then, on the other hand, so how would you have felt when you got to the end of Craft 101 and you basically don't have anything in hand?
Guess it depends on the community. I could see where some communities you could walk into, you could
Real
have these
disparate.
really different voices, and this will help be the process to
right.
align the voices and the commitments, and so that's the end product right there. Well, okay, everybody's at least now on the same page.
so maybe what.
We're like, I think we're more like, okay.
You are ready to
We
do
want
marketing.
to move.
But we
want-
did have a pre-meeting prior to even doing the conference call with you guys. Remember when we had that at City Hall that night? And we read you what we did in the application and said, this is what we've asked for. And then all those questions, that pre-question assessment, who do you think your visitor is? Who are you attracting? Marilyn was there, I know you weren't, Jeff. Tim was there that night. You know, when we did that with 22 people, ironically, Jeff wasn't there, Vivica wasn't there, and I don't think Kirby was there. Tim was, but when we did that, it kind of started by saying, so we didn't walk into our first meeting with people saying, what was this application for, what are we doing? I think having that mandatory meeting with the community prior to going into that first session probably helped. It also helped because city council talked about it before we applied and did the resolution, so we were really clear about what we were doing.
And I said it earlier, but I was serious when I said, you know, you all have been exemplary to work with. I mean, this is sort of a model community that we hope will be able to continue working, but that's not realistic. And so one of our goals is to make sure that this program is nimble enough to be modified and tweaked so that if a community like Trinidad comes in and says, we know what's going on and we want to be very actionable throughout this process, that we can modify everything and tweak it to that expectation, but then also have the ability when a community is not ready, because a lot of the times with our application, it's a very delicate balance between need and just community capacity, and so you're trying to find the folks that really could benefit from this program, but that also have the community engagement and the capacity, whether that's through staff or volunteers or a board or something that could hold on to the knowledge and the information that's been shared and really move it forward. So it's sort of a delicate balance that we try to figure out through that.
So maybe for one,
process.
for a community that didn't have an organized capacity or a staff, maybe one of the best things you could do is come in like with shopkeepers like Vivica or stakeholders and help them understand how they can themselves benefit from tourism. Even if a consolidated community plan didn't come out of it, at least the individuals that participated would come out with an idea of how to strengthen their business. And then what maybe comes out of that down the road is a community effort. So I can see that.
I'm a little stuck on, so $10,000.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know what we can do with that, but I still would really love to have dollars so that we could pay somebody to help educate our populace more. Right now, this time of year, because some years in school system, increase graduates, what I don't know what they can do all summer. I just feel like helpless because I really think that would be a really big advantage.
So there's a couple ideas on the table. That's one, and then would be the internal, pay for the internal marketing campaign. Another one would be to pay a consultant to do visitor analysis, to really hone down on who our visitors are that are coming here right now, why they're coming, where they're coming from, what other segments we have things on the ground to attract, and how and what channels we should market through, and that would then lay the groundwork for beyond the marketing plan we're working on now for the next step.
We did talk about that at the
We
previous
did.
meeting, that
We
having a
did.
baseline would be very important to know how we've grown this and what the effects of this.
And it would also lay the groundwork for the larger marketing plan for 2021 that would say, here's where we are. So there's some different ideas on the table of what to do with the 10,000. The tourism board's gonna need to decide, but we're hoping this group will impact that decision. So what do you think? I mean, do you see
Well, I
the,
see both, the thing that it's always bad to act from a position of, desperation. My concern always has been with downtown Trinidad as we watch businesses that look like they're gonna be good come and go, is that, we've got some good businesses downtown right now that aren't the standard businesses that have been there for years that are really hurting. And word of mouth advertising is some of the best that we have. So for me, a baseline seems like a really great idea. However, I keep thinking if we take 600 kids that go home into families that are equipped 2,000 local people with other brothers and sisters and parents and affect them to know what's going on in our community, that would be really great advertisement in itself. So, and it's only $10,000, so.
I don't think we have to be limited to one thing.
Oh.
And I don't think it's just 10,000 because we can match dollars to that.
Oh, that's
And
right.
especially going forward, looking at budget for next year. We can take any surplus we have from this year. So definitely an in-house campaign to our own citizenry has got to be part of the solution. I think it's going to end up being part of this plan. And we're definitely going to have to kick something off late fall, early next year to launch that. Maybe it aligns with people going, maybe that organization aligns, but whether we hire a consultant to that, maybe we hire a consultant to do both.
Right.
I think we're at the point, but eventually that visitor analysis would be so helpful.
You're right. It's just really, it's still frustrating to me. I think I mentioned this in an earlier one, that I was in the grant review process this year, where the best of the best kids, and there were tons of best of the best kids that put their applications in, more than you would think. 30 kids put their application in for a couple. Blockbuster, so many, I mean, we got a lot of 4.0 students in town, really crazy. But the one of them that was a 4.0 student still wrote, like he took it right offline, Trinidad's known as the sex change capital of the world, and a whole paragraph that I could have probably got somewhere. And I was thinking to myself, shame on not only the parents, the teachers, our community. How do we get a kid that's in the top 10% of the schools and doing 4.0, and how is he pulling something offline because he's so detached of what the town is? And so that made me feel like, wow, does his parents not spend time in town? Because there are people that live in town that let the kids go to school, but they go to Pueblo every weekend. What can we get to those families to let them know how cool, how culturally enriched, how many events happen, you know, if they're not combined to any boards or anybody that's downtown. You know, it was really greatly disappointing for me.
So giving feedback for that initial investment of 10,000, there's a couple of options there. There's the development of an internal marketing campaign that has several different strategies, and then there's visitor analysis. And I don't have a preference over both. I brought the visitor analysis because that's where I thought we were from our last meeting.
Yeah, just my opinion, which you can take it or not. I think the visitor analysis probably would be more beneficial in the long run.
Okay.
Well, and let's think about, right, I feel like we can meet size desire with the utility newsletter.
Yes.
How
In
much,
other ways, I think you can do that more as an internal process, whereas you may actually, somebody to help you out with the visitor.
well, that's like aside from what I'm saying. So what I was trying to say is we can do the newsletter thing, which can only possibly be a couple $1,000s to print 12,000. I mean, let's say we have 4,800 people getting a utility bill. Let's say we send them 3 things. We've only spent like $1,200. We still have $9,800 of this money alone for a visitor readiness. You know what I mean?
My other suggestion might be that we could take a component, from the outdoor rec and some of our, we might have some fairly new volunteers who would go and do a school assembly.
Maybe that's what we do. That's a great idea.
That might be,
No,
Yeah,
so I work with kids, I can guarantee you that the information you give to children does not then make it to their parents. So you can put a flyer in their backpack that they can then pull out, and these are only elementary school kids, that won't work for middle school or high school children. You know what I mean, like, they're not gonna filtrate that info. Oh, I was in an assembly, guess what, we have like these great cultural cornerstones in our, you know, like, that's not happening. We all wish 15-year-olds were cooler than that, but they're not, so, like, I mean, just repetitive.
rather than spend, what I guess I'm trying to say, Kirby, is rather than spend our money on trying to get that, if we wanted a communication with.
I think our community is worth spending money on communicating with. I think one of the things that I have noticed as a current or new arrival is that our actual residents get often overlooked. And to actually spend the money, put the time in, give them nice things is going to create this community
I think we're
investment we
saying
want.
the same thing, but I think our data is essential as well.
Yeah, I just don't know why we can't do both.
Yeah.
And I do think with just a week left of school, am I correct there? Just a week left, that it probably is something to kick off in the fall, but it gives us a couple of months to put something together. And we could still start it within this year.
I mean, we were the gender reassignment capital for over 40 years. Like, maybe this person is a transgender individual, and that's why it was so important to them. Like, I don't think we need to like bump stock stay on the library.
That book would be lovely for the kids to have available to take home. No, that might be something with the downtown map.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point, is for the students to get a Trinidad visitor card. That's a really great point.
So again, I will go back to when we have field trips and we handle things like that. Like, this is not how kids work today, right? They're not going to keep up with something you hand them. Like, that's just
Right.
we could have them take photos of it or something like that. I mean, like, I'm being serious.
No,
Like this is kind of, yeah, like, this is my wheelhouse, so I'm not gonna back down on that one for sure. Like, the only way to get information through children to adults is constant repetition. And here, like, to the house. Like, we literally have a Friday program, every Friday, it's exactly the same, it's in the same place, and we have to take flyers every week and literally put them in backpacks, and that's the only way that we've successfully convinced people that we have a program, you know what I mean? So it's not, like, the utility newsletter. Sorry?
It's not a one-time.
So it's a process that takes a long time.
But
Right,
the utility thing, I don't think there's any question that that should be happening.
right.
Okay, we have one
Has
more
to look-
topic we want
has
to
to
go
look
into here without going over time. So we want to talk a little bit about future opportunities. So, and thinking about this program, you know, in the future. And so in thinking about our two pilot communities, of course, you all are fairly familiar with Walsenburg since they're just down the road. With you and them, just in general, if you were going to make a comment on the kinds of communities in general that would benefit from this program the most. And speaking of, you know, level of tourism development or the region of the state, of tourism product potential, right? What kinds of communities do you think would benefit the most from this program?
Seems like there's sort of I could see some communities where almost a condensed, like if they're just trying to find their way, like here's a short seminar on what's happening with tourism and the resources and your and ideas to take next steps to try to get something going. Where by, I think, on our behalf, like where we're ready to rumble, we want actionable traction, ready to go.
We have
So,
dollars, we have staff.
dollars, we have dollars, that's a big thing,
It
of
is
course.
very good.
Right.
So the dollars is a big question. But yeah, the content, I mean, the content was so eye-opening, so I can see how just the exposure to this content would get the juices going.
So but to your point, Jeff, do you think maybe a community that didn't have dollars, didn't have an organized staff or an organized process would benefit from a shorter seminar?
Yeah,
More so than
Like,
full-blown programs?
right.
You know, some communities of that nature could even benefit working on getting together a tourism board type of organization. I mean, that might be the most beneficial for a community that basically has nothing much to work with.
They have the value and the desire to develop tourism, but they don't have the tools.
Right.
I felt like when we applied for this, we had the tools. We didn't have them organized in a capacity, we didn't have community buy-in to the level that we've shown through this. We had willing community members.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's what, just even reading your application, that was our feeling from the very beginning.
So I don't know, I don't want to make a supposition about the other community that you're working with, but now that you've been through it with two different kind of communities that are in a similar area, I guess you're seeing different levels of capacity to implement. So it's hard for us to speak from any perspective but our own, but I would imagine, like using my example, if our Kiwanis Club had decided, and I love Kiwanis, I'm a Kiwanian, so I can keep on them, but so they had decided to do an application to develop tourism, but they didn't really have that broad spectrum of community or an organized financing mechanism, I think it would be really difficult to get through this program in that auspice and actually develop a deliverable to implement.
I think that's true.
Do
And
you guys
certainly that's
agree?
part of the application process of who's selected and who isn't. Those all go into that decision.
Well, we could just pick one of our city commissions of art and culture and decided to do it, or if community district and decided to do it on their own and didn't have the broad community support of the merchant, outdoor rec, heritage, creatives at the table, then, you know, we feel like agritourism and culinary is a huge asset for us, but that was the one where we really didn't engage a person to stay with us the entire way through. We just didn't have the buy-in in that sector yet for tourism. So even as we're kind of congratulating ourselves for having buy-in, we've got
There's
segments
still some
missing.
groups missing.
We've got segments missing from these final days. Do you guys agree? Yeah.
If you were going to give advice to a prospective craft 101 participant, what would you tell them?
Make sure your most passionate people that are in your city are on board and, you know about it. And, you know.
What else?
You know, our community groups are pretty tight because there's so many people that are intermingled on a lot of groups, but you know, in a different community, it might not be that way. And, you know, they wouldn't be maybe take it to full extent if they didn't have, you know, awareness on all boards and.
Any other advice you might offer a community who's interested in doing this program?
Well, it certainly wouldn't happen without Victor and Raven, who did all the administrative stuff together, so, I mean, I don't think there's any way we could have done it without them. They
Right.
arranged the places, the food, called people, everything,
So
so,
make sure there's someone on board for administrative
Yes.
support.
Yeah.
yes.
And I think follow through the reminders.
Yeah, the reminders are
Yeah.
huge.
And I'll be cheesy, come to the table with an open mind and dream big, you know, I
Yeah.
think, like, and I, it's cliche, but I'm being honest, like, I can get caught up, like, I don't know if anyone was with me, but 4 or 5 meetings ago, I was saying, I don't want motor coaches we can't feed on. Right, and I don't feel that way now, right? Now we've like created, called people, come up with system size, offered box lunches, we have food trucks in town, so, like Tim was saying, like, guess what? Tomorrow we're by Town USA, it's who we are, like, like dream big, like do it.
We
Like,
designated ourselves, right?
Right.
yeah, we do that, so, like, we've designated ourselves a lot of things, so let's, like, I love it, so I think.
We designated ourselves a creative district before we were one.
Right, build it and they will come, or.
Tell them that's what you are, and they will believe you, and then you become that.
But I
mean, it's-
believe we were the first creative district in the state of Colorado, long before they designated it, because on the weekends, there were 30,000 people here, and if you wanted to party, if you needed your boots repaired, if you needed your wagon done, if you needed new bloomers, if you needed to get laid, Trinidad was.
We're all here.
It was the first creative district.
Best brothel in the South.
We had a few of those.
We did, we got mentioned on Godless, the Netflix show.
I watched that.
Oh, really? When he gets his glasses, the random guy in
Right, yeah,
the
yeah.
bar, he says, oh, I've just been hanging out in Trinidad.
Oh.
Shooting Pharaoh, they've got one of the best brothels in the area.
I still sell brothel tokens if anybody
Oh,
would
you
like
do?
one.
Ooh, yeah, I love, yeah.
And I sell brothel for bags.
Oh, that's so funny. I'll say yes to my sister.
Yeah.
Okay, the very final thing we want to ask you is there's other programs. So beyond Craft 101, what would be helpful for you? Now that you're at this point going forward, what would help you out?
We've got 2 targets for craft and mentorship programs, so we'll be following up with those.
Okay.
We haven't discussed 201, so we're not going in for that on June 1, because that's due June 1, and we just have too much homework and stuff. But I assume Craft 201 will be the one we select this next year, and what will come out of all of this is we'll see where our big land purchases are going, what's happening, maybe an aspect of development comes out of that, and we'll specifically look at a segment of developing the tourism industry and do a Craft 201, but we'll come in for something like that next year. We'll see where the relationship with Walsenburg goes and Highway of Legends. Victor and Raven have participated in almost all of it. Andrew and I have been in and out, and I know they're very interested in creating and putting some dollars toward a marketing campaign to build the legends. So biking along the legends is a huge part of that. The counties are invested in that. So that may be the best multi-jurisdictional investment. First will be bike study, bike lanes, bike marketing along Highway of Legends might be a start. Developing all those assets. So that I'm not choosing for the community, I'm just saying in conversations with Portland County, they've showed some interest in that. So what other things from tourism? We're going to get our itineraries together for the Colorado Field Guide. That's going to be one of our homeworks. So we're going to have that. We hope to have an idea for the marketing matching grant that comes out of this plan right here. A segment of that tourism will put, say, $10,000 to a particular marketing campaign and ask for something, or that may end up being with Portland County because they're talking about something with that as well. One other thing,
Well, and even just utilizing CTO.
CTO,
Like our
utilizing
connection.
CTO. hopefully, and we haven't talked about it, but hopefully we'll have a large group, although tourism usually goes to the Governor's Conference of Tourism this year. I think that would be a good thing if anyone in this room wants to follow with that. Where is it happening this year, Jill?
Vail,
Vail.
October 25th, 6th, and 7th.
Oh, yeah, someone would like to go.
And you can get, if you're a first time attendee, you can get a scholarship. You can apply to get a scholarship for free.
So there's a scholarship, I hope out of this group we get, and we've got one, when the next time, and it may have already closed for this year, the tourism leadership.
It's still open.
Is it still
Yeah.
open? Okay.
Is it June 1st?
Is it June 1? Okay, we were talking the other day about that one.
What
And
is that
then
one?
it's putting someone up from your community to be part of the tourism leadership journey. It runs from October to October, so.
Terry, you're kind of taking home the thunder.
I'm sorry, Jill.
I know, she's
I think, okay, two things and they're beyond CTO. So Kirby's got this great project going with the Colorado Film Office. So we're hoping through economic development to help support that. And then we're going to the Outdoor Rec Conference. I'm going in July and then Tina are going to the next one the next time that comes around, November. And we're interested in starting to look for some things developing in our outdoor area. I still don't know yet how or what direction we're gonna go with agritourism, but everybody loved that segment so much. I know we don't want to set it aside. I just don't have a clear idea from a staff perspective on where we go. We're gonna have to identify a champion. And we've got champions in these areas, but we're gonna have to identify an agritourism culinary champion.
Well, I'm going to bring like animals and do more cooking on our gardens and stuff, so like
I
maybe.
think celebrity chefs or some different things we could do related to that line.
Well, and one of the opportunities will be the workshops, and so we're hoping to have like 8 available next year. And then, so communities, it'll be a rolling application, so communities can apply and say, we want the culinary and agritourism workshop. And that's to do kind of exactly what you're talking about, to say, we need more time with this topic and theme, and we need to take a deeper dive. So we'll customize it and work with the communities when they're selected. If it's a day, day and a half, we can add some tours to it, there'll be guest speakers.
We might have to come back around and do that on outdoor rec too, if this, when this large, project becomes available for us to talk about, because I don't think we'd be quite ready for a 201. We'd need a workshop first to really talk about how we wanted to approach that. I mean, we're gonna work on a land management plan right now. But the next step would be then, what are the public aspects of this project and how do we want to market this responsibly? And that might lead to a 201.
Yeah, because the environmental sustainability piece would definitely be like a huge benefit of like, we did this and it
Access.
turns out
Insurance,
that this
access.
brought all these squirrels and the
Right.
squirrels brought these snails, or hoverworks, but you know what I mean, like, I'm sure that
It's
like.
always squirrels.
It's always squirrels, like
Yes,
skunks,
great.
like, but it's got, I mean, there's gotta be someone who's like, well, we did this and all of a sudden there was 400 people here a month that wasn't here and this is what happened.
Mhm.
Like,
You know, Goodland Tech, you know, what Goodland, Kansas did. They took a picture of, or they got a jacqueline made of Vincent van Gogh's sunflowers. That's, you can look it up online. I went and saw it. You drive around the highway in the middle of nowhere and it tells you only a couple miles off this road, you'll be able to see this giant red edition of Vincent van Gogh's artwork sunflower. You go there and it's way up there and it's huge. And then there's a brand new gas station and a Dairy Queen and something else. So they just built something for you to come off the road and see it. Everybody goes out there and takes a picture of themselves where they're down here and the picture's up there.
And then you get gas.
And then you go, Dairy Queen. So they probably spent $10,000 on this picture, right?
And I think probably looking at the
20,000.
hot sheet and figuring out how to interact with the hot sheet, which comes out now that we'll have our priorities. Then the last thing I was thinking of was, when we finish our plan and we kind of know what we're gonna hone in on, using the CTO to help identify some press that we could do a fan tour down here. once we say, okay, this is what we're gonna market for 2019, and working with you guys to say, okay, who can we host? We're really good at hosting, if we have the time to put it together. And then trying to direct that kind of public relations. So those are my thoughts. I didn't mean to steal the thunder, but that's what came out of this process for me, was that organized approach.
There's one thing I was, like the economic development aspect of this, so I'm working on a little business incubator and, trying to think of how to match prospective business development to opportunity. And this just seems like such a strong area of growth. And so another, even like a specific module that was like, how do you do that gap analysis or leakage analysis or the different analysis to identify the opportunities, and then having just an ongoing program built into your economic development structure to help foster,
That's what I think the
incubate.
tourism entrepreneurship module should be more
Yeah.
geared toward that. Like,
It just seems
where are
great.
your successes, where's your leakage, and how do you plug that? And because that's something you look at every couple of years, because it changes as you plug a hole, a new one's created, it changes. That's probably the best. I couldn't put it in words earlier, that's probably the closest I've gotten to saying, I think that's probably what the entrepreneurship thing
Right.
should be more driven toward.
Yeah,
Okay,
if
so-
we could encourage people to have entrepreneur
It's like,
businesses.
it's like a paddle boat shop.
Really good.
Probably a paddle boat shop
Right.
isn't there yet, because we don't have access to them, but maybe a kayak or a fly fishing shop or outfitter or something like that could go now. Yeah.
Well, we're gonna take just a little bit of a break, and then Jill's gonna do a wrap-up. Jill and we will do a wrap-up then too, and then for those of you who'd like to do that, we'll go to socialize for a little bit.
I would love to, I have a meeting at 4 o'clock, I have to go before they have an
All right, so let's take like 5 minutes, because if you're like me, you need to stand up for a moment. You need to sit down, I need to stand up.
It's one of those handwritten, it's a long.
Where's the watch today?
It's gone, incredibly gone.
verified rooms. They came yesterday, there's
$25, I think that's what it's
See how that works?
I'm a diva.
I want one too, are you?
Yes.
Yeah, they were free stuff for you guys.
That was very
kind. I was saying the same thing you were trying to do last night, right?
Never
You're in the
mind.
same room? No, I'm
We were,
trying
yeah.
to say the same thing.
Yeah, we were last night.
Are you tonight?
But we're going up to Walton, so we're there.
So now we don't need them anymore, and then these two girls are.
So you are,
Cheryl,
no.
but that's asking
The night before, I have something 8:30, I like to.
Oh, it is here.
I think they were there today, and their rooms are in for 2 months. They can be checked out. I just, I'm just in the middle of the night. I just get over and it's just but they're not doing bunch right now. You just show the show.
So, I guess, you guys are staying tonight, right now? Drew? That's where we're always ready.
But, well, I'll be over there on next Wednesday.
And I'll send it over to EDCC.
Yeah.
It's no, because you're moving to so it's the 23rd.
Which is so good out because it's supposed to be next week.
Okay, no, hang on, okay.
Come on, confuse me with facts.
I mean, it's Sunday during the week. And we'll both be there.
Now, we, so we should take, input that we can switch up for stuff.
My real reason why I don't show up
Okay, here's a let me call the payments of them, because I haven't incurred them.
Last time I met, I did.
I don't think we I think we paid out Carnival for the first one, and they don't have to pay for the second one. So let me take the next to get together and I'll send them all next week in a package. We'll probably take more, but we'll have our campus out and that. So we pay for that one. And then if we can't reimburse us for that, I mean, we should not get the fees.
Great.
Does that work?
Yes, that was great.
Okay, thank you. And then send me just your quick paragraph on distribution for tomorrow morning. And enjoy the summit and learn things. And why don't you write down 3 ideas that you hear while you're there? And then try to have them. Just 3 ideas that you hear while you're there.
But number one,
Whether they're citywide or community. And that'll be some discussion when we get back. I don't know if you're the others. Yeah. Okay, travel safe. Are you taking your car or are you taking your? Okay, so you'll do your miles. And then any meals that you have, remember, we have to do your meal for that when you get back.
So I might go back to Jonathan, like, if I heard something, ask him something,
So are they doing your conference or will you be paying out a coffee for all your
As far as I know, they usually do.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay, so what you do is you're leaving tomorrow morning, right? So from the time you leave, you write me a little summary lunch provided for us, conference dinner on my phone, and bring the receipt back. And then whatever you pay for out of
Yeah.
Is your hotel taking care of it? You guys your mileage every time?
they're easy to grab.
Be careful. If anything comes up, let me know. See
It's not just like business house.
I put the ones from today's lunch in my purse. So like, pizza Hut, we save on the city. So do you want to read that or city?
She's going.
Okay, directly. It's no problem, just get some money, so that's match. So that's just the paper, so here's the 5-2 and 5-15 B.
Right, yeah, it doesn't matter.
She's got breakfast and snacks for 5-15, which are included. And is that what this receipt is?
Right.
49.17, and that's 49.17, and then she's got the meeting here, and we did the snacks. So I'm gonna give you this safe receipt that goes with that, and this invoice, and the most thing is Kirby's to shoot you. There's her email address to shoot you a W-9, so that takes care of 5 and 6.
Got it.
So now we just need to get 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah. I mean, I
Good
just
deal.
honestly think.
And I know for a fact the only one that
One of
went
the
through
things
was
that
Mount
I'll say
Carmel.
is it's not a lot of,
Okay.
First one back in March 30th.
you know what I mean?
Okay.
So the rest of them are hitting my desk now, so I won't pay them, what I'll do is have them. Now that invoice was just that you can change.
Like,
Okay.
like,
We'll ask her to send you that directly to my email address on there, so you guys can trade that with the W-9. I'll reach out to the college and have them bill those 2 days.
no, I
You
mean.
know, get for room 3 there, but we'll have the food. And then Mount Carmel's the same thing, which is why we're charging the lunches, so.
Okay.
Pretty sure we did the first one, but second one.
Okay. Yeah, as long as the total's not.
So, just let me know, we'll have to look at it and see, and if it is, then you and I can talk about how to handle that.
Okay.
Because I've got both general fund and tourism money.
Okay, and that might even, if you guys need. Like how we have to do it.
We're gonna get out a little earlier than you were thinking.
Right.
Yeah, for lunches, so that's,
Okay.
it's not 6,000.
Yeah, absolutely, you know, I have found that,
See
like,
that.
with the other
Okay.
meetings in town.
Okay, well, let's look at, so get Kirby to correct that, we'll look at that, and we'll go back and forth, and whatever, and then you get that one, and then we'll just pick up the
Yeah,
rest.
and like,
We can decide when to put your time.
Yeah, I don't know. actually, I got rid of mine. So HSAs and if you have one of those.
And I know, they are doing some facilities,
When we have some emergency. So, when we have to, that would say that.
Well, I liked it when it was over there because I
But when
could
I was,
sneak out the
it's,
store
there was a
and
time,
see
for
what.
a time when I was eligible for.
I can't write it here.
Discounts.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh, $300 a month, that's okay. But then, when I wasn't eligible for that, 1,600 a month? No, I'm not gonna do that.
He'll complain anyway, he thinks your chairs are too hard on his sweet little back.
I sort of agree, these are like kind of a beating.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
They're not as bad as the metal massage chairs.
No.
Yeah, that's true.
This is just fine.
Yeah, they are.
It's all good, kids.
I need some cushion in the back.
You can run over to Comida, buy a $5 chair, bring it back and sit in it for the rest of the
Okay,
day.
and then I'll need it.
And then leave it here.
What is it? What chairs?
Comida market is closing, and
Right.
they're selling all their furniture.
Well,
Or they're moving out.
yeah, they're moving over to where the, whatchamacallit liquor was on Elm.
Drop City?
Oh, wow.
That's where Naaman was going.
Oh,
Well, doesn't Naaman work, isn't he running a restaurant?
these are the company.
They don't have a restaurant.
Well, but I thought that was the idea. I don't-
Yeah, they're gonna have just bars over there for everything.
I don't know. All I know is that the building is selling furniture. That they're currently housed in for way cheap. And if you wanted a cushion chair,
That's the first.
that's the place right now.
See, we should like break this one.
We should have. They do have some display things that I wanna buy for my gift shop. So I
That's unfortunate to see them closing, because it's a nice community thing.
Yeah, I was sad. I always showed it off, like, and this is.
I know, right?
Like, right. in
We
the-
always buy our eggs there and a few other things.
Where do you come from?
The co-op, now the.
Now we have to get from the
Yeah, they haven't found a place to move, huh?
We were just
Yeah,
asking that
Carson.
question.
If Carson Drop City Liquor is where they're
Oh,
going.
is that where they're going?
Because they're downsizing. That's what well, they're not gonna do market, I think they're gonna.
It's still bigger than their space where they were. They only have stars, right?
Perfect for dry cleaners.
We,
You could put vents out there.
The Drop City Liquor?
Dry cleaning. A dry cleaning store.
Please.
I
Please open the dry cleaner.
thought it was always a good place for dry cleaning. You could pull up to the window or you could walk in. It's not very big, it's strong, thick.
Who bought the old, the lobby in the studio?
Oh, yeah,
Is
yeah.
it white and blue now?
no, that's the
Like,
same.
I'll be-
And now it's Simmons leasing it from Jeff Campbell.
I
Jeff
thought that
Campbell
would be a good dry
bought it
cleaner.
from Gene.
I don't know, Jeff.
He has buckets.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody needs to open the dry cleaner.
I always thought, but I thought that building would be a good one.
It's just, we don't have a dry cleaner.
what you're missing.
All the police, where do the police, where do the police?
They take the-
Pueblo.
Everything is
Yes.
Pueblo.
Well, isn't there one in Raton?
Yeah, but she's not open on Mondays, and she's not open on the weekends.
Or Wednesdays or Thursdays?
Well, you know, there must be a business a little.
Sometimes.
She's never open for the dry cleaner, but she's never open.
Sometimes that's true, because if she's got other things going, then she's closed.
Well, you know, Tom Kress had Kress Cleaners for sale for many, many years.
Yeah.
Nobody bought the business, so, you know,
They
there
got
can't be
his,
that many
but the people
customers.
in Raton bought his equipment.
No, I think you're right. I think there's like 50 of us that are doing the dry
Yeah, except for all the police and the
Those
sheriff's.
police and the jail people out.
I know Linda Barron is
they not
excited
get
in
there?
there, and she goes once a week, so you drop off at Linda Barron, she goes once and she goes
Oh, I
back.
was a grader.
Those ones we give out and drops everybody's off and then puts a surcharge on it.
Yeah, but it's easy to read those things.
But I heard.
Oh, sure. Yeah, she's got this various lines.
Perfect, yeah.
And you might well want to, hang on the wall and,
No.
Jill, yours is at state.us.
Ross's or.
It's true. Well, Gina just gets her stuff. Noah's Ark.
Alrighty, shall we?
Shouldn't we have like the same as the taxes, not the state paying the state?
No, I don't know.
I don't know if they'll do that,
I don't know
actually.
if we can do that.
So,
If
we'll
that
see.
ends up, find out, and then if not, the city will do it, so.
Yeah, if the county comes back and they're like, I know, so we'll just, don't worry.
No, we'll pay it.
Yeah.
Because we've got match
I
money.
don't know if we can give history.
Yeah.
They're,
We give a marketing matching grant funds.
Yeah.
yeah, but that goes in a different bucket.
Bucket.
But it says, because we can do it internal.
Yeah.
We
You
do.
know, the college may be the same way.
Is that
But it is an emergency transfer, you're right.
Do they have, do you guys have a marketing grant for this year?
Me? Okay.
Dawn Difference,
Did it.
for all of the community museums, did one for last fiscal year.
Okay.
But the college may be the same way, Jill, so find out, because it's Colorado Community College.
We gave one
I
to
think
Mesa,
that's okay.
the
Okay.
Colorado
What gets us
Foundation.
if
Okay.
we exceeded a certain amount, like, we can't pay Huerfano County directly because we've already given them $25,000 for our marketing matching grant.
Okay,
And so we have to pay La Plaza indirectly and we can't.
okay,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
All right, I don't know the answer to that, I'm sorry, Jill.
That's okay. I don't know the answer either. I'll figure it out.
Hey, Jill, would you like to?
Sure. Well, Tara, thank you very much for kind of going over everything already. It's great that you have a really good sense of the opportunities that are out there. I did want to take this time just to talk about the implementation funding and to see if y'all had any questions. One of the questions that we have on our end is around the timing of it for you and when would be best. As far as when we open the application, when we close the application, when do you need the money by? Because we're pretty flexible in that regard, but I don't want to say, we're going to open it and then give you 2 weeks and you guys be like, we don't have, not that we would do that, but I just want to be sure we have that conversation, so.
So we need to do an RFQ.
Okay.
So we have to define the project, define the scope, and it sounds like the data collection and analysis is the way we want to go. So what I'd like to do is, while you guys are still in the program, is shoot the CTO and the consultants kind of the idea of what we think we want to put out there and have you look at it and make comment back on it so that we're clear on what we're asking people to submit proposals for. So once we agree upon what that is, then we advertise it for 3 weeks in a multitude of cities. We put it on Downtown Colorado Week. We'll put it on CML, anywhere saying we're taking proposals for. We usually do it like we don't set the amount. We usually just get back what we get back. And then when we have that, I'd like for this group to go over the proposals, to hire the consultant to do the data analysis and visitor identification. So when we choose one, then this group would recommend it to the tourism board, who executes the contract, and that's when we would need access to funding, but not before. Do you want to do it like a reimbursable, Jill, where we pay the consultant and you reimburse us back?
Yeah.
Or do we do it like you just give us the 10,000, but we wouldn't want it until we open? We've chosen a consultant and we contract it. We're ready to contract with them, and that would be when.
Elizabeth, how do we do that for the blueprint one?
So for the blueprint, because sometimes we're looking at fiscal years.
Yeah.
And so on our end, I know, okay, for the blueprint, for that timing, it's upfront.
Yeah.
Simply
I mean, we
because
wouldn't
of
be
the-
able to give you the money before July 1st.
We wouldn't have
Yeah.
probably this, our goal would be to have this consultant chosen by maybe the 1st of August and be
Okay.
ready to contract in August.
Okay.
So they would start no later than September 1.
Okay.
So would you, as a group, be willing to come back together and review proposals from firms to do this visitor analysis and make that recommendation to tourism board? Will include Camilla and Sai from tourism board in that review process, because they're the chair and vice chair. So we'll have a couple of staff and you guys will review and then we'll recommend to tourism board and then
Yeah, and it's not reimbursement based, correct?
it doesn't, for us, it won't matter either way. It's just a matter of how we do the paperwork.
Okay.
And then our goal will be to have that analysis done. And you mentioned, Kathy, that sometimes these analyses can go over an extended period of time.
It's not a bad idea to do your data collection for a year, because you
Wow.
get all the different visitors throughout the whole year. So either do it for a year, or you pick your high tourism season and do it then.
Well, if we're not even gonna have this it's just not feasibly possible with the constraints that the
Right.
city will have to work through. August 1 would be the earliest.
Right.
We would be mostly, if we did data collection from August to January, that's not gonna be representative
No.
of
And
what
that's-
we're doing.
And a year is desirable, and you don't have to do, get tons of questionnaires filled out every day or anything. You pick some days to do it and do it throughout the year so that you get those variations in kinds of visitors. Do the winter visitors and summer visitors.
But what that might do, if we did that, is that might allow us to go in for blueprint or craft 2.0, 201, to go in for craft 201, and that would be due next June 1. And so this visitor analysis would be ongoing, but at the very end, if we went in for a large marketing plan like the gentleman presented, and let the visitor and data analysis influence that. And then we'd be set up to do the next budget season. If we did that, craft 201 into, does it have to be done by June 30th or no, it can go into the fall? If we submit by June, we'll be awarded sometime after July 1.
Yes, so that is a much longer selection process because it falls within OEDIT as a whole.
Okay,
So
great.
it's June 1st would be, and I think the applications are open for 6 to 8 weeks, I would
They are,
say.
yeah.
So they close on June 1st, and then the selection committees have about 3 weeks to decide, but then the awarded communities aren't announced until mid to late July, and then usually work would start 2 to 3 weeks after that.
That would be great. That would be really good timing for us with, to go for 201 at the end of the visitor analysis. So that means all the work that we're doing now with this craft studio 101 would inform 1.5 years of marketing. And then the big plan could come in and inform 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, and I will say there's a caveat there because the blueprint is a governor's initiative, and so it might, we're not taking it away from the CTO, but the timeline might just get changed because
Okay.
OEDIT may not do it as the Blueprint 2.0 as one of their initiatives from the governor's office.
Okay.
That might just get taken off the table, but the CTO will still have the Craft Studio 201.
Okay.
But the timing might be a little bit.
Whether it's blueprint or not,
Yeah.
doesn't matter for that.
Yeah, but just the timing might
But it'll be
be
in craft, okay.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think about that as a timeline? I know that we want action, and our goal is to get action out of this, but we also have to plan long, and that does take time.
Yeah, and I agree.
We have to do
It's-
both at the same
It's
time.
frustrating, we have to do as much as we can now, but we do need a long time.
We do.
It doesn't stop us from doing other things.
Right, exactly.
Okay,
I
so is that,
think you're gonna be really surprised by your data collection. I think there's gonna be a lot of surprises, and you cannot do it for less than a year, because we really ebb and flow at weird times.
and one of the important strategies that's been in the back of my mind, but we didn't talk much about it once, when we talk about developing out of that visitor analysis, who we have and who we can develop to. I just think there's such a market coming off of the Amtrak that maybe we're not tapping into right now.
And market too.
Two,
Yeah.
so this visitor analysis should set up that marketing plan. It should look at that analysis and say, here are all your untapped opportunities. And I think Kathy said it earlier in today, for us, we really need to pick 2 to 3 real strong opportunities to market to. So I think our anecdotal evidence will give us a good thing to start with for next year, because between talking to Vivica and Craig and Della and Cy and all the people in the community, Kirby, who interact with tourists regularly, we can get a good anecdotal evidence. We're certainly gonna hit the mark more than we have this last year. We did a lot of national print advertising, so. Then we get a good plan for next year while we're implementing this long-term strategy, and then that's how we can stay engaged with the CTO. Then if out of the Huerfano comes an idea to apply for a short-term marketing plan based on my initial conversations with them talking about maybe putting some dollars toward going and doing a joint marketing matching grant, we might do that then to help build the Highway of Legends, kind of as a set-aside to what we're doing for Trinidad.
Great.
And strengthen that relationship.
So if you think we close the applications for the implementation plan on July 20th, would that give you enough time to go ahead and?
How convenient.
I would think so. I would think so, especially if we can get some feedback from you guys on the RFP format that you're going.
Okay.
I would think so.
Just let us know. Just let us
Okay,
know.
sure.
Just like open up
Close
the
it.
application and
Close
close
it.
it. It'll be like,
Why don't we look at the RFP before you open it, and then when we get that done,
Okay.
we'll open it.
Yeah.
When we know it's going out for the 3 weeks, that's
Yeah.
when we would open it.
Okay, great. Yeah, because for us, our next fiscal year starts July 1st, so we'll be having time to really
Okay.
rescue and give that to you.
And then there's, as Tim said, there's so much we can do now. Colorado Field Guide, we need to
Yeah.
involve our local places on colorado.com. There's so many things that come out of this. We just got lists, we need to start interacting with the hot sheet. There's a lot of things we need to do.
I will say, I do want to mention, so our CTO PR team, we just had, the lead person on that is Carly Newbrook. And I just had a nice conversation with her the other day where she was talking, she's like, I need to familiarize myself more with like Trinidad, La Junta area. And she is a very avid mountain biker. And so she would be, I started talking, I was like, we'll put together a van trip for sure for southeast Colorado, maybe sometime in the summer or the fall. So
We'll coordinate that
that's
around
something we
Tim,
can
make
definitely
sure
do.
he's here, yeah.
Yeah,
Pull that together, you be our go-to guy.
yeah, so I think, something like that could happen in the next.
We could do
5 to
that,
6
and then we
months.
could have dinner with creatives. We'll do some fun culinary things.
Yeah, and with that, so that's sort of the first step, just sticking on the PR train for a little bit. That's the first step, and then once they become more familiar with this area, then we can work. And this might have happened already. It might have to have media and journalists come and do fan trips as well. And so they'll actually do trips of 3 to 4 days and have 6 to 7 journalists either from Colorado, from across the country that'll come and do a similar type of trip. They just got done doing one in southwest Colorado, doing Cortez and Mancos and doing all this stuff and visiting the creative district in Mancos and so it's just a really nice opportunity to kind of highlight the best of what you have, and then your ROI on it usually ends up being pretty good in terms of the exposure that you'll receive.
We've done some short one-offs, like Tom from AAA, he's kind of a fan of ours. We've had him down here. I've seen him at different events, but that's probably the closest we've come to developing a one-on-one relationship. The Post has been down here a couple of times. They always want to talk about marijuana. We always want to talk about everything but that. Not that we're trying not to market marijuana, it's marketing itself, but we did get in that, wasn't South by Southwest, it was another little piece that they did, and they talked a lot about the creative district, and they did propose that multi-featured piece this last year, so. And then I was excited that Elizabeth, that's the PR person for Destination Development,
Sarah Jane.
Sarah Jane, when Sarah Jane said, yeah, she pitched them one place and they decided to come to Trinidad instead. That was exciting, yeah. So we should see the confluence, I think that was, or I can't remember which, anyway, we should see that come up soon. So we've gotten a few one-offs here, but we would love to do something formal and official and multi-layered of that nature. If we can get just a little bit of time to put together our marketing plan and have this group coalesce around that visitation, then I think we can
Yeah, I would think.
make it a good experience. Mhm.
Good, we'll have more trails built by then.
We will.
We need a trail map too. We really need to do that if we can do it in any way, you know, just not the full blown one that we're gonna do, just something, because they might people come in asking.
We do have one, so we'll have to get that to you. Yeah.
Is that the one you're talking
Yeah.
about? Yeah, I have it and I can make copies of it.
Peggy Westlawn is gonna make some more color ones. We have some black and white ones, but we'd like to get some color ones.
You know, you can do that through the city hall, so it doesn't cost anything.
Oh, that would be good. Didn't really think about that.
Yeah, being the Parks and Rec Commission, I think we need some of that.
Okay.
No, it's great.
Victor's probably the best person to see.
Because we're getting asked about it all, we're getting asked about it all the time.
Yeah.
We're getting asked about it all the
But
time.
we specify on there that it is mountain bike, it is not a city bike. Someone said
Yeah.
it's too rugged,
Oh, no, yeah, it's mountain bike and hiking.
but if you could put a note on there that it's mountain bike,
Okay.
because, you know, I've had people think that they could take just a standard bike,
No, it's not, yeah, it's not bad. Okay,
just FYI.
merci beaucoup.
And just so you all know too, we always have the craft mentor program that's available that provides 50 hours of mentoring for any local business or an event if you're trying to work with an event or some sort of effort.
What do you do for like a local business?
What's that?
What do you do for a local
It
business?
depends on what they want. So it's customized. So that business would come to us, it would be tourism related business, come to us and say, you know, I need to figure out, maybe it's a visitor, you know, understanding the visitor data or figuring out the next steps with that, or maybe it's some sort of financial or business plan or a marketing plan or an integrated social media plan, whatever it is that that business needs. It's an online application form that's rolling, so you just go online and fill that out, and then we see what your needs are, and then we have a whole big bucket of mentors that we work with from across the state. They're experts in a wide variety of different fields, and then we say this mentor would be a great match with the needs of this business or nonprofit, and then you're paired together, and it's 50 free hours that business or organization will receive.
Can I get your business card?
Specific examples right now.
Yeah.
We're working on agricultural tours, so they actually had two mentors, one person to help with actual tour creation, and they're visiting 4 farms over a 6-hour period with lunch included, so they had someone working with tour development, and then they had a separate mentor working on the marketing plan, so how did you get information out about this event? Another example, right now working with Steamboat, just finished doing an event called Bike Week. So finished working and helping their plan on that event and to expand that. It used to just be a couple of days and now they want to go a week-long event. So helping them create different events so that could now be a whole week-long event versus just a weekend event to keep people there. So there's a variety, it's kind of what that individual is asking for.
We've got 2 going on.
Oh, nice, who?
I'm not gonna say here, 'cause
Okay.
I think it's theirs to say, I don't wanna speak on behalf of them. One's a business, one's a nonprofit.
And so we work with the historical societies, we've done a lot with different historical societies. One, St. Louis Valley, we worked with 10 of the 16 museums that are part of the St. Louis Valley Museum Association to help with social media because the volunteer base had no idea really how to utilize social media to try to increase their visitorship. So we actually went down and someone did an in-person training and helped them create, post, and figure out how to do that piece.
You know, one is an awesome local business that's doing really well, but wants to take it to the next level. And it's a new event that's struggling.
And Elizabeth manages that program, so. Good.
Doesn't mean we're limited to just those two though. If you've got
Yeah.
ideas or.
Yeah. No, and what we also say is that just because we've helped you once doesn't mean we won't help you again. So we actually had a couple that have been repeat. So within the process, they realized it was a step, they needed to do something first, and then they had in mind that they would do it a year or two. So then they came back to us and said, now we're ready for this piece. Can you find us a mentor to help implement that piece?
One of them's one of our rental assistance businesses where we helped them get off the ground for the first 1.5 to 2 years. And now that they're kind of off the ground and that city subsidy is ending, they're ready to take it to the next level. They're going to do great, so we'll see how that goes.
And that's a good point with Elizabeth, what she was just saying about doing it again. Rio Blanco County is on their second year doing their Studio 201. And so you guys can apply for that next year and then get to a great place, but then realize you've got all these other things that you want to work on next. And so Rio Blanco has done a really great job of just taking advantage of that. And they'll have received the implementation funding for that as well. And so yeah, we're always saying, yeah, if you want to go through it again and do the program again, and there's other things that we can help you with, great.
And you're certainly welcome to create your login and do it on your own if you want help from the department. We're happy to help you do that too. So.
Yeah, and we will say, I will, for the 101 and the 201 in the application, like how you're bringing up the Kiwanis piece, it says a local,
did it say that?
local government
Okay.
or a DMO, a destination marketing organization, or a tourism related organization. So that's kind of the parameters there.
Okay. So you would catch that
Yeah.
anyway.
That's a red flag for us. Yeah, and so I did want to also bring to your attention, if you have not gone onto industry.colorado.com yet, please do so, because if you go to build our industry, you'll hit the destination development program, and then under that is where all this information lives. And a great tab to check out is our additional resources tab as well. So this kind of goes through, like, Tara, what you were mentioning earlier about the Colorado Creative Industries and the film opportunities and the outdoor rec opportunities and the opportunities with the Office of Economic Development and International Trade. It goes through the different heritage and cultural resources, the culinary and agritourism resources with links to all these different entities.
Would you give us that address again?
Sure, if you just go to industry.colorado.com.
And it's Colorado spelled out.
Yes. And then it's, biblically you'll see at the top it says build our industry.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just go to the song lives under the destination development program.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so with that, we've got it all sectioned out for culinary and agritourism resources, a link to the Colorado Agritourism Association, they're a great resource, the Colorado Distillers Guild, the Colorado Brewers Guild, the Colorado Chefs Association, and then the Outdoor Adventure Resources by Colorado, BLM, all these different groups. So it's just kind of a one-stop shop, hopefully, if you're trying to find out a little bit more. And then other resources and funding, Club 20, Colorado Association of Commerce and Industry, is the Adolph Coors Foundation, the Anschutz Family Foundation, El Pomar, all these different ones that hopefully can help you get more funding and support. So it's all there. We tried to aggregate it as much as possible and pull it all together for you. And then we have two new programs that I'm hesitant to mention because they're not approved yet. But hopefully, our budget, the overall CTO budget gets approved tomorrow. And so with that, sort of everything starts to happen very quickly, like within 4 weeks of yes, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. But we do have two hopes for new funding support for next year. And one is going to be a project and technical assistance grant. And so that will also be a rolling application process, and communities will be eligible to apply for up to $15,000 with a 25% cash match. For sort of, we designed this opportunity to kind of fill in all the gaps where the marketing matching grant or an implementation funding might not fill. And so this grant can actually be used for wayfinding and signage, hiring a technical assistant, consultant, hiring another consultant to try to help you with a strategic plan or a marketing plan or whatever that may be. What else? I mean, it can be very broad.
Market research, it can be used not only for wayfinding signage, but the creation of a signage plan. Because sometimes before you have the signs, but you need that plan first.
CDOT doesn't cover the creation of the plan, but they'll cover the fabrication and implementation.
Yeah, so this is kind
That's
of
wonderful.
to help do all of those kind of pieces around tourism development that we didn't have a funding source for. With that, it's kind of the same idea that it's the nonprofit, so either the community or the city that would be applying, for the funds, and it's not for individual businesses for that piece. And so that one will open up if the funding is approved July 1st, and the applications are rolling, so it would be open till around January 2nd that you could apply. So
But it'll sort of be first come, first served too, because we only have limited bucket funds for this specific grant, so the earlier we can get it in, the better. But just something to think about. And then one sort of big requirement that we're putting on this is that the applicant tourism operating budget cannot exceed $500,000.
And the reason with that is because sometimes it's going to be a county or it might be a city entity that has a very large operating budget, but we want to say specifically it's.
I
But the thing is, like a city, as a city, that might not be for some, but if it's county-wide for a county, if they're doing it all, they might have a larger one. So we wanted to kind of put that in place.
One side building less like Hilton, we might get close.
Oh, and she just puts a little grin on, we're begging for the motel. Blues Fest is anyway, begging.
Yeah.
Two of them,
Those lodging tax dollars would be nice.
yeah.
We're almost at 3.
I'll get this grant before you get too much money.
Don't worry, get that wayfinding done right.
Yeah. And so then the other opportunity that we're hoping to implement next year will be a small marketing matching grant. So we're splitting up the marketing matching grant opportunities into large and small options. And the small one is really, the big differences are the match is lower, it's a 25% match required. The ask maximum is $10,000. And then the lead applicant, their tourism marketing budget cannot exceed $100,000.
So that might be where we could partner with Orphan, if they wanted to be the lead applicant, and we
Yeah.
could provide a portion of the match to
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
as their partner for the highway budget.
Yes, whereas
Small one.
with the large marketing, it's a one-to-one match, and
Okay.
it's a lot more competitive. We're
Okay.
hoping that the smaller one will kind of open up the field a bit more.
Smaller jurisdictions,
Smaller.
that's good.
And it's also kind of meant to, with that one, kind of looking at almost even first steps into it. So where you are versus right now with the marketing matching grant, if the community wants to apply, they're like, oh, we have to do this huge project, even though they might not have those first initial steps taking place. They might not have a visitor guide. They might not, even be listed on Colorado.com. So this is also that way to help them get that first foot in because they feel like, well, I have to do something huge because I'm getting this pot of money versus let's start with a small grant. Let's get these initial foundational pieces done. And then once we have that, we can move to that larger grant and apply for that.
And that's really all I had. So in addition, hopefully y'all know about GoCo as well and all their funding opportunities for the trails and things like that.
So would you say one of the most important first steps that we do is start engaging with our merchants to make sure that if they have a tourism-related business that they're listed on Colorado.com?
Yeah.
That's one of the first
I-
things.
Yeah, I think that's one of the first things that would be really great. I have, and to encourage them not to just sign up their business, they can be included on the hot sheet. So then
Right.
they're aware of different things, if there is maybe a, a store or a restaurant that's doing some neat culinary thing, they know to alert you.
And then that would automatically pull them into the Roots Guide if they're applicable, if their business is.
And as a side note to that, and to you, so I'm having Garrett start to do my social media, because he's got so many other chores, so we can just come and do it. So Garrett might be good for you too.
And Victor's
Just
gonna
like an hour a
start,
week.
Victor's gonna start attending the merchants meeting. Vivica invited him, so that one of the first things we'll do is put together a little information sheet on how to get on Colorado.com and list your business.
And I would also say with that, not just getting on there once, but updating it, because even Vivica came up to me, and even in the Roots Guide, there's some places that are listed that might not longer be in operation because that hasn't been updated. So even something, one of those ideas, an easy thing for this group to do is, okay, should I look up on Colorado.com and put out what's for Trinidad and figure out what's on there?
I spoke
That's
to
already
Ray
there.
and she said that she would remove those.
Okay, and it might be a good idea to
Do an audit.
for Trinidad as a whole.
We'll
And
put
see
that
what-
into our department meetings and start talking about that, and, yes, I think that's definitely one of the most important first steps.
And then,
Thank you.
Tara, have you connected with Dave Flutie at all for social media at all?
No, we haven't had a chance to, but we do want to take over the social media when we're up and running. We want to take it over. It'll probably be later in the summer.
So he's the CTO's social media strategist, so one of the opportunities that's available for destinations is that you work with Dave to sort of select a week throughout the calendar year of when you, as a
If we're going to do
destination,
Trinidadios, then we're going to ask for that week.
when you want to take over our social media, our
So if you
Instagram account.
you take pictures throughout the week,
Absolutely.
you're taking over the
Yeah,
social
they
media
should-
and just
As
posting.
I know, because it was part of our,
Yeah.
So if we did the week of Trinidadio, we would have all the pre-fest, we would have all the people coming in, we would have things getting set up, we would have the acts, we would have everything, and it would be all chronicled on the state social media, so that's
our
our,
music.
but I haven't talked to Rusty or Jerry yet, but that was our
And I
intention.
wouldn't delay that, too long, because
We'll
that
probably
calendar
pass
does
this
book
week, yeah.
quickly,
You know where
especially if it's for the
Gary.
summer.
Yeah, oh, yeah. So thank you for reminding me, yes. We're going to talk about it tomorrow morning. It's my director's report for tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see if it
We have a few minutes set aside to wrap up our end of things and see if we have any questions for us. So we have definitely enjoyed being here, and I wish we had more time here actually to spend, especially looking around town. I've really enjoyed this community, and I've told other people to stop here. So, and hopefully I'll stop here again and also have a little bit more time. So do you all have any final questions you'd like to ask us? We'd like to leave a little bit of time for that, just in case there's anything hanging out there.
What is the biggest mistake you see people do after they do Craft 101?
You guys are the first ones.
Yeah,
Oh, we're gonna be watching
So give us 6 months.
Yeah.
And they're gonna talk about us,
Not the problem.
and they're gonna talk about us as the mistake, so come on, you can't do that.
I could talk about the potential. The potential things would be obviously not keeping up and getting your marketing plan done. I mean, I think that's probably the biggest one. So the final project is kind of your big output. So the follow through is always hard, right? It's always hard. I mean, when you've been talking about, we talk about this a lot, but we need to actually get something done, and that's always the hard part. So I would say that if there was any failings of any communities, that's what it's gonna end up being. And I've seen it happen in a lot of the communities I've worked with, where we do the whole program and then nothing really happens after that. So it's really incumbent on all of you, right, to keep up the momentum that you've got going now. But that's normally the main thing that needs to be happening. And I'm sure it won't happen here because you all seem to be pretty well on track.
But still, buddy up to keep each other accountable, It's, you don't want to be the person that's nagging somebody else, but if you have somebody that you agree with, that you're going to check into them back and forth, both directions, that might keep it easier.
I think by the tourism board owning the responsibility, that cements that it'll get done. It's not like staff's gonna go back to work and then get on 100 other things. There's a meeting every other week with deliverables for every other week that happen. And if we don't have deliverables, then that's a very public thing. So I think just by the way we structured this, it's set up to be more successful in implementation rather than less.
And when Andrew and I get our ducks in a row for the action plan and get them on the, they're just what the same, right? And get the date straightened out, that gives you, the specific times when things are due, and so your bi-weekly meetings can, be used to keep you on track.
As soon as you can get that to us, sign, I will sit down and look at those
Okay.
dates and maybe flex them a little bit, and then we'll take them to the board the first
Yeah.
Wednesday in June, just coming right up.
Right.
And I would just kind of piggyback on that and not only keep communicating and follow through with one another, but I would look at it as a I feel bad about this, and I don't want to say a mistake, but if Elizabeth and I left today and we never heard from you all again.
Right.
We don't want that. We want to hear from you all as much
Our
as possible.
first meeting is in Denver.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah, you can come to the CTO
Yeah, our
office.
first
You're
meeting.
welcome anytime.
We like
But
that.
just to say, like, we want you to be engaged with us as much as possible.
We're gonna have so many questions as we're doing
Yeah.
this homework and as we're
Yeah.
getting into it, that it would be impossible to not be engaged with you.
And Tara's a great representative for you all. She's on our destination development committee, and she's very engaged with that group too. So I'm not worried about it at all. But that would just, in terms of what would be a mistake on our end, that would be something for us that I would consider.
I think the opportunity that you have given us in this program is, I have been that main voice, coming to the CTO and participating in the meetings, but now there's a lot of voices
Yeah.
that are involved that will be engaged with the CTO for their own business, their own interests. And I think that will make the community stronger, is to really diversify that relationship with the state, so that it's not just always one staff member who's having that conversation. So if Victor is working with businesses to get them on Colorado.com, he won't come to me if he's having an issue, he's gonna come to Elizabeth, so I think just broadening that relationship, I think this opportunity has given us that opportunity, which will make our relationship sustainable in the long term with Colorado tourism, even though we have one of the longest running relationships through our Welcome Center. This really brings it into our tourism board and our business community.
And that's a really great byproduct of this program, because your state tourism office is your best resource.
Yes.
I mean, they're there for you, and they want you to connect with them and use the resources they have and apply for the grants they have. So I think it's really good that, more people are now involved with this relationship.
And then I, just on a personal note, say, I got to participate in all the destination development committee, was hiring the consultants, and Arizona State is not disappointed at all. It's been a wonderful relationship. Now I'm in a different role as being the recipient, so for all the reasons that you were chosen, you've delivered. So it's been exactly what we've looked for, and I think your educational background allows you to be flexible in developing the curriculum and going forward. And I'm really excited to see some small rural jurisdictions get on those online modules and use them. And I think you'll see us as a community, as we go forward into next year or the next year, and we have new people come on one board or another, utilize those modules as part of our across-the-board training. I think that it's going to be wonderful. So
And there's going to be a good bit more
That's a lot to
detail
say
in
there.
that. There'll be more detail in those when they get done, so they should be, so there'll be more there even for you, even though you've been in on some of these classes, if you want to call them that. There's even more available in the online.
And then I guess for me personally, you know, I live and breathe my job, which is sometimes healthy and sometimes not, but I have so much passion for the community, and sometimes I fail at certain areas, and sometimes I succeed at certain areas, but for one reason or another, I keep coming back to the well and bringing that. And what this was for me was an opportunity to connect with a lot of other people in the community who are doing and feeling the same thing. So I think that's always regenerative when you recognize the passion for improving the quality of life in the place that you live and you want to invest in. I think that successful initiatives are built on that kind of passion and investment. And so it was great to have some of our staff here. It was great, really, really great. And I cannot thank Vivica, Tim, Kirby, Jeff, everybody, Camilla, Cy, all of you guys that participated. It's been we're so thankful to have you in our communities and willing to do this.
And I wish I could have spent a little bit more time. It's just the last couple of weeks has been rough, and I couldn't get my will into it.
I wish you could have been here too, to take the heat.
To take the heat, I'm sorry. You know, Karen was supposed to be
Holding
back.
it, I'm holding it against you.
Okay, you, wow.
Long-time friends.
Forever. No coffee at your place.
What is this, like east side, west side? Is that
We
what
do,
you
we
guys
have
are?
conversations. We're so glad we're this far apart from each other.
Now, it's the same blog. Yeah. Anyway.
We have to check, we call each other and see what's happening down in each other's end of town.
That's great. That's good. She ran, something's going on.
Who was it?
Kirby.
Just ran out the door, like, somebody's doing something they're not supposed to be doing.
I do, it's new cat.
So anyway, that's all I had to say.
I did send out an email when I was at work to my merchants and explained that we've been in some very interesting meetings. And we would like to get their feedback. Did you get that email, Viv?
I only got the date so far.
Yeah.
But anyway, so maybe more will come next
If there's
Thursday.
any meeting.
Huh?
If there's gonna be any meetings.
That's why
Oh,
but-
yes,
Okay.
got it now.
Any other feedbacks or questions for us?
Please, tell Christine and Brian. Thank you.
Thank you.
No,
And Hillary.
got a donut.
She's up over the hill.
Making the trek over to Nelsenburg in a couple weeks.
I'm gonna take a picture, one last picture of everybody.
Well, there was not
Like,
much.
yeah.
Today's Tuesday,
The agenda on your.
so it's
Yes, I
what?
We will.
Well, Chris's done, they're close to
packet.
that. I just.
And then we'll talk tomorrow about whether you want us to print it
Oh,
every time.
okay, well,
so
then
it's
I
not
guess
visually.
it's,
Buckets.
You could save paper for me. I can read it on the